Welcome back, dear friend. Tonight, we are traveling back in time to an era of castles, kings, and the brave warriors we call knights. Together, we will explore the fascinating world of medieval history, how knights trained, the epic battles they fought, the armor and weapons that defined them, and the culture and customs of kings and kingdoms. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you enjoy the type of content that merges myth and mystery. And hey, let us know from where you are watching and what time it is for you right now. Sometimes our stories are better than sleep, and other times they make you dream louder. It's time now to dim the lights, turn on a fan for some gentle noise, and let's cover what we have for tonight together. The birth of knighthood. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a world long ago when Europe was a patchwork of kingdoms and fiefdoms. Forests stretched endlessly across the land, and stone castles rose like silent guardians over valleys and rivers. This was the world in which the knights were born. The story of knighthood is not simply a story of battles and swords, but a tale of loyalty, honor, and a lifestyle that shaped medieval society in ways both visible and hidden. Let us wander back to the ninth and 10th centuries, when the notion of a knight began to take form, first as a mounted warrior, and eventually as a symbol of chivalric ideals that would endure for centuries. In those early days, Europe was a place of uncertainty. The collapse of the Roman Empire had left wide stretches of land vulnerable to invasions, whether from Vikings in the north, Magyars in the east, or Saracens in the south. Lords needed warriors who could respond quickly, defend lands, and assert authority over territories. This practical necessity gave rise to a new kind of soldier, the knight. Initially, the term knight simply referred to a young man of noble birth who could ride into battle on horseback. The horse itself became an emblem of status, power, and military effectiveness. Without a horse, a man could fight as a foot soldier, but the mounted warrior became something more than that, a figure who carried not only weapons, but the prestige of his lord and the weight of his honor. In this era, society was organized under the system of feudalism. Lords and kings ruled territories, while vassals pledged loyalty to them, promising military service in exchange for land, protection, or favor. Young men, destined to become knights, were often born into families that had already embraced this martial tradition. As a boy, he might witness his father or uncle preparing for battle, training with swords and lances, maintaining the armor, or discussing strategy over maps drawn on parchment. Even the sound of a horse's hooves clattering against the stone floors of a castle courtyard would become an enduring part of a young aspirant's life, a heartbeat echoing the rhythm of duty, preparation, and anticipation. To become a knight was never a matter of simple desire. It required a lifelong journey of discipline and training. A boy would typically begin as a page, around the age of 7. During this period, he learned not only the basics of combat, but also etiquette, the history of his family, and the principles of loyalty and service. Pages often served in the households of other nobles, assisting with menial tasks delivering messages and observing the daily life of knights. This exposure taught them the nuances of courtly behavior, the bow of the head, the graceful handling of a goblet, and the careful selection of words. It was in these moments that the seed of chivalric culture was planted. Long before the boy ever lifted a sword or mounted a war horse, by the time he reached 14, the page would become a squire, a personal assistant to a knight. This apprenticeship was far more hands-on. The squire polished armor, cleaned weapons, and learned the technical skills required to handle them effectively. He practiced swordplay under the watchful eye of his mentor, learned to shoot arrows with precision, and studied the art of horsemanship. Every day was a blend of labor, study, and rigorous training. Yet, there was also a sense of ceremony and ritual, a growing awareness that the journey toward knighthood was not just physical, but spiritual. A squire observed his knight's code of conduct, the ways he treated allies and enemies, and gradually internalized these lessons. The battlefield itself was a school for knights in training. Many young squires accompanied their mentors to skirmishes, sieges, and full-scale battles. From a safe distance at first, they would watch strategy unfold, learning how formations were constructed, how to read the enemy's movements, and how to maintain composure amid chaos. Over time, they were allowed to participate directly, experiencing the shock of charges, the clash of steel, and the unpredictable tides of combat. These experiences were crucial, for knighthood was not merely about status or skill. It was about courage, resilience, and the ability to act honorably under the most extreme conditions. The word knight itself derives from the Old English knight, meaning a young servant or boy, and over centuries it evolved to signify a mounted warrior of noble rank. Across different regions of Europe, this transformation took slightly different forms. In France, the term chevalier emphasized the horseman aspect, while in Germany, Ritter carried connotations of both martial prowess and moral responsibility. Despite these variations, the essence remained the same. The knight was a protector, a fighter, and a symbol of social order, combining physical ability with ethical and social expectations. Knighthood was also inseparable from the larger political and social fabric. Lords relied on their knights not only for defense, but also as enforcers of law and order, messengers of authority, and symbols of their lordship. Knights, in turn, relied on the support of their lords for land, wealth, and legitimacy. This relationship was a delicate balance, a contract of mutual dependence, reinforced by ceremonies, oaths, and rituals. The act of dubbing a knight, raising a sword, and declaring him bound to honor and service was more than a formality. It was a rite that transformed a boy into a warrior, a member of a social elite, and a custodian of values that extended beyond the battlefield. As we drift through these early centuries, it is essential to understand that knighthood was never static. The concept evolved, influenced by changing warfare, the rise of castles, the codification of chivalry, and the interaction with other cultures through crusades and trade. Yet the birth of knighthood, the emergence of the mounted warrior sworn to serve and protect, remains one of the most fascinating moments In medieval history, in this first chapter of our journey, we witness the origins of a tradition that combined martial skill, social duty, and ethical expectation into a single, enduring institution. So, as you imagine these young pages and squires, the clatter of horse hooves, the smell of armor, and the quiet determination in their eyes, allow your mind to drift gently. Picture the world before gunpowder, before the maps of nations were fixed, where courage and loyalty shaped destinies, and where the simple act of training to ride, to wield a sword, and to serve a lord was the beginning of a life that would be remembered for centuries. The code of chivalry. Close your eyes and let your mind drift slowly across rolling hills, the faint smell of wildflowers, and the distant sound of hooves on soft earth. In this serene medieval landscape, we now turn our attention to something far more delicate, yet equally powerful than swords or armor, the code of chivalry. If knighthood was the body, the physical training, the strength, the swordplay, then chivalry was the soul, a guiding light that gave purpose to all those long hours of practice and peril. It was a code written not always in ink, but in action, in the way a knight treated his lord, his allies, and even his enemies. The code of chivalry first took form in the 12th century, evolving from earlier traditions of loyalty, honor, and martial ethics. It was never a single, unchanging document, but a living framework adapted in different regions and eras to reflect cultural values and societal needs. Its principles were profound yet simple. A knight was expected to be brave in battle, loyal to his lord, generous to those in need, and protective of the weak, particularly women, children, and the defenseless. These ideals might sound romantic today, but in the chaos of medieval life, they were both a moral compass and a social necessity. Imagine a knight standing in the courtyard of his castle, the weight of his armor balanced against the weight of responsibility. Every swing of a sword, every charge on horseback, every decision in battle was measured not only by effectiveness but by honor. A knight who acted cowardly, who betrayed his lord, or who harmed the innocent risked more than death in battle. He risked shame, exile, and the loss of his very identity. Chivalry was, in essence, a contract with the self, a daily meditation on courage, loyalty, and virtue. The concept of loyalty was perhaps the cornerstone of chivalric life. Knights pledged fealty to their lords, promising to defend their lands, enforce their authority, and serve in military campaigns. But loyalty extended beyond contracts. It encompassed personal honor, a sense of integrity that bound knights to truthfulness, fairness, and responsibility. A knight's reputation was as valuable as his sword. Whispers of treachery or cowardice could undermine a career or even end a family's influence. Thus, loyalty became a blend of legal obligation, social expectation, and personal ethics, a principle that resonated through every action, from the battlefield to the banquet hall. Courage, too, was an essential element of the code, but it was not recklessness. True courage required judgment, patience, and the willingness to act rightly even when fear pressed upon the heart. Knights were expected to confront danger head on, to protect those unable to defend themselves, and to lead by example. The bravest knight was not the one who sought glory for personal fame, but the one who acted selflessly, who risked life to uphold justice and honor. This quiet, steadfast courage became a defining feature of knighthood, celebrated in both stories and historical accounts. Generosity, or largesse, was another key principle. Knights were often wealthy by modern standards, or at least sustained by their lord's resources. Sharing food, offering aid, or providing protection were all considered marks of true nobility. A knight who hoarded wealth or neglected the poor violated not just social expectations, but the very spirit of chivalry. In this way, the code intertwined moral duty with social stability. Generosity reinforced alliances, inspired loyalty, and created a network of mutual support across the medieval world. The protection of the weak, particularly women, was deeply as enshrined in chivalric thought. This element of the code has often been romanticized in literature, from troubadour songs to epic tales of knights rescuing damsels from dragons or bandits. While some of this imagery is symbolic or exaggerated, the principle itself was practical and cultural. Knights were expected to act as guardians, defending those who could not fight for themselves, ensuring that justice and mercy prevailed even in violent times. This principle was not always perfectly observed, but it provided a moral ideal to which knights aspired. Honor in warfare was another fascinating aspect of chivalry. Knights fought not only with skill, but with rules. Duels, jousts, and battles were governed by conventions that distinguished noble combat from mere cruelty. For instance, it was considered dishonorable to attack an unarmed man or to strike from behind. Paradoxically, even in times of war, knights were expected to exercise restraint, showing respect for their enemies' courage while asserting their own. These unwritten rules created a structure within chaos, a way for combatants to measure valor and maintain dignity amidst bloodshed. Chivalry also influenced life beyond the battlefield. Knights were expected to conduct themselves with courtesy at court, to attend religious services, and to engage in cultural pursuits such as poetry, music, or patronage of the arts. A knight who mastered both arms and intellect was celebrated as the ideal, a harmonious blend of strength and refinement. This holistic approach reflected the medieval understanding that a person's worth was measured not only by physical ability, but by moral and social contributions. The code was reinforced through rituals and ceremonies. For example, the dubbing of a knight involved a solemn, night-long vigil, often spent in prayer, reflection, and meditation on the responsibilities ahead. The ceremony symbolized the transformation from a young squire into a fully fledged knight, not merely a change in title, but an initiation into a lifestyle of discipline, honor, and service. Every sword raised, every oath taken, carried centuries of tradition and expectation, connecting the individual to a lineage of warriors and nobles stretching back through generations. Legends and literature of the medieval period vividly reflect the code of chivalry. Arthurian tales, romances, and epic poems illustrate knights wrestling with moral dilemmas, performing heroic deeds, and striving for personal excellence. These stories were not mere entertainment. They served as both instruction and inspiration, reinforcing the ideals of courage, loyalty, and honor. Listening to or reading these tales, one could learn the subtleties of judgment, the virtues of restraint, and the importance of empathy, all woven into the fabric of heroic adventure. It is also fascinating to note that the code of chivalry evolved over time. Different regions emphasized different virtues, reflecting local customs, religious influences, and political realities. Yet the underlying principles, bravery, loyalty, generosity, protection of the weak, and honorable conduct, remained consistent. Chivalry became a lens through which knights viewed the world, shaping decisions, guiding behavior, and providing a framework for identity that transcended the chaos of medieval life. So, as you imagine the quiet halls of a castle at dawn, the soft clang of armor being polished, and a young knight kneeling in prayer before the ceremony that will mark his passage into knighthood, let your mind drift slowly through these ideals. Picture the knights walking through forests and fields, guided not just by maps or orders, but by an internal compass of honor, courage, and devotion. Allow yourself to feel the serene rhythm of their lives, the slow cadence of duty intertwined with quiet reflection, and the deep sense of purpose that sustained them through the unpredictability of war, politics, and daily life. Training to become a knight, imagine, for a moment, the soft light of dawn spilling across a quiet castle courtyard. The air is cool, filled with the gentle clatter of hooves and the occasional ringing of metal on metal as a young boy begins his day. This is the beginning of a long, intricate journey, one that transforms a child into a knight. Training to become a knight was not a single lesson or a brief ceremony. It was a lifelong process, shaped by discipline, courage, and quiet determination. And it began long before any sword was ever drawn. The journey typically began around the age of 7, when a young boy of noble birth was sent to serve as a page in the household of a lord. This initial stage was not about battle, it was about laying the foundation for a life of service, honor, and responsibility. Pages learned the manners of the court, how to speak with respect and tact, how to serve at the table, and how to attend to the daily needs of their lord. But these lessons were intertwined with subtle lessons in observation. A page would watch knights polish their armor, adjust their horses' tack, and move gracefully through the hallways of the castle, learning by watching the discipline and precision of those who would soon become their models. During these years, education was also a vital part of training. A page might learn reading, writing, and the rudiments of arithmetic, skills that were surprisingly important for a future knight. Knights were often tasked with managing lands, collecting taxes, and negotiating with allies and rivals. A young page who could read maps, understand documents, and calculate resources had a distinct advantage, blending intellect with martial training. Lessons in history, religion, and etiquette completed the foundation, ensuring that a future knight could navigate both battlefields and courts with equal grace. By the age of 14, the boy would advance to the role of squire. This stage marked the beginning of hands-on training. A squire became the personal assistant to a knight, responsible for maintaining armor, caring for horses, and preparing weapons. Every morning began with careful inspection of equipment, ensuring that every strap was fastened, every blade polished, and every piece of armor ready for immediate use. Attention to detail was essential. In battle, a single loose buckle or dull sword could be the difference between life and death. Squires also began rigorous physical training at this stage. They practiced swordplay, initially with wooden weapons, then gradually progressing to metal swords as skill and strength improved. They learned to wield spears, axes, and maces, mastering both single-handed and two-handed techniques. Strength and endurance were developed through running, riding, and lifting weights, all adapted to build the agility and resilience needed to survive the rigors of combat. Archery, too, became part of the curriculum, teaching accuracy and patience, while wrestling and hand-to-hand combat honed reflexes and body control. Horsemanship was central to a squire's development. The mounted knight was the epitome of medieval military power, and the bond between horse and rider could not be understated. Squires learned to ride from a young age, mastering balance, posture, and control. They practiced charging, stopping abruptly, turning at speed, and maneuvering in formation, often in mock battles designed to simulate the chaos of real combat. The horse was both companion and weapon, and a skilled rider could exploit its speed, power, and agility to devastating effect. Mentorship was a constant part of squire life. A knight did not simply teach by instruction. He guided through example, critique, and encouragement. The relationship was intimate and hierarchical, yet built on trust and respect. The squire learned to anticipate the knight's needs, to respond swiftly to orders, and to internalize principles of chivalry and conduct through repeated observation. In many ways, the squire's life was a mirror of the knight's, reflecting not only martial skill, but also demeanor, patience, and judgment. Training was not limited to physical exercises. Strategic thinking was equally important. Squires observed battles, both historical accounts and live encounters, studying formations, tactics, and the psychological elements of warfare. They learned to read the terrain, anticipate enemy maneuvers, and make rapid decisions under pressure. These lessons emphasized the mind as much as the body, instilling the ability to remain calm, calculate risk, and act decisively when the moment demanded. Religious practice was another pillar of a squire's education. Knights were expected to be defenders, not only of their lord, but also of faith. Prayer, attendance at Mass, and meditation were incorporated into daily routines, teaching discipline, reflection, and a sense of moral responsibility. Many squires spent the night before formal ceremonies in quiet vigils, contemplating their duties and seeking spiritual guidance. This connection between faith and action created a holistic framework, reinforcing the idea that knighthood was not merely a profession, but a way of life. Tournaments and mock battles provided practical application for the lessons learned in the courtyard. These events were more than entertainment. They were essential arenas for testing skill, courage, and composure. Squires often participated alongside their knights, gaining first-hand experience in simulated combat. Jousting, with its controlled chaos, taught precision, timing, and nerve, while melees tested stamina, teamwork, and tactical flexibility. Even in staged competition, the principles of chivalry, fairness, respect, and honor were expected to be observed. The final step in becoming a knight was the dubbing ceremony, typically around the age of 21. This ceremony was both solemn and transformative. The squire would kneel before his lord, who would raise a sword over his shoulders, symbolically transferring authority, responsibility, and honor. The newly dubbed knight would swear an oath, pledging loyalty, courage, and service. Often, this ritual was preceded by a night-long vigil in the chapel, spent in prayer, reflection, and meditation on the duties that lay ahead. Throughout this process, the physical and psychological transformation of the squire was profound. From a curious, eager boy, he became a disciplined warrior, guided by the principles of courage, loyalty, and chivalry. His body and mind were honed for both battle and governance, capable of executing orders with precision and making independent judgments in the heat of combat. The journey itself was as important as the destination, instilling values that would shape not only the knight's life, but the society in which he lived. As you let this imagery settle, picture the squire riding slowly along the castle walls. At dusk, the sun casting long shadows across the courtyard, the rhythmic sound of hooves blending with the whisper of wind through the towers. Imagine the meticulous care of armor, the quiet focus on sharpening swords, the reverent moments of prayer before sleep. Allow yourself to feel the steady pace of this training, a rhythm of discipline and growth, patience and perseverance, echoing softly in the mind like the distant tolling of a bell. Training to become a knight was not merely preparation for battle, it was preparation for life. It shaped character, instilled virtue, and created a continuity of tradition that connected generations. Every challenge faced, every skill learned, every lesson absorbed in silence contributed to the making of a knight who could navigate the chaos of medieval life with courage, wisdom, and honor. And now, as you drift with these images in your mind, let your thoughts rest on the anticipation of what comes next. The armor of a knight, a miraculous blend of artistry, engineering, and protection, designed not only to shield the body, but to symbolize the strength, status, and spirit of the warrior within. The armor of a knight. Close your eyes and imagine the gentle clinking of metal in a quiet castle armory, the faint smell of oil and leather, and the slow rhythm of a hammer shaping plates of steel. This is the world of the knight's armor, a world of craftsmanship, ingenuity, and silent strength. Armor was far more than protection. It was a symbol, a carefully constructed second skin that transformed a man into a living embodiment of courage, honor, and duty. Tonight, we explore the remarkable world of knightly armor, from chainmail to full plate, and the stories embedded in every link, rivet, and polished surface. In the early days of knighthood, knights wore primarily chainmail, an ingenious design of interlocking metal rings that offered flexibility while resisting the cutting edge of swords and the piercing tip of arrows. Imagine a young squire laboring for hours to repair or maintain a mail hauberk, each ring painstakingly inspected and linked with care. Chainmail could weigh between 20 and 40 pounds, distributed across the shoulders, chest, and arms. And yet it allowed the knight to move with surprising freedom. It was a garment of patience and precision, a lattice of protection that whispered quietly as the wearer moved, like a soft, metallic breeze following each step. As battles grew larger and weapons more lethal, knights sought greater protection. Plate armor emerged in the 14th and 15th centuries, a sophisticated system of interlocking steel plates that covered the body from head to toe. Picture a knight being carefully fitted for armor, each plate hammered and shaped to match his exact measurements. A full suit could weigh anywhere from 45 to 55 pounds, yet the design allowed remarkable mobility, articulated joints, leather straps, and clever engineering enabled knights to mount horses, wield swords, and even crouch in defensive stances without feeling overly burdened. The helmet was perhaps the most iconic element of the knight's ensemble. Early helmets, such as the Great Helm, encased the head entirely, offering protection against sword strikes and arrows, while small holes allowed the wearer to breathe. Later designs introduced visors that could be raised or lowered, balancing protection with visibility. Imagine a knight lowering his visor before battle, feeling the cool weight of metal against his face, and taking a deep breath before stepping into the chaos of combat. Some helmets bore elaborate crests, engraved designs, or plumes of feathers, signaling identity, rank, or allegiance. Each helmet told a story, not only of function, but of lineage and pride. The breastplate was a masterpiece of engineering, forged from tempered steel. It protected vital organs while reflecting blows that might otherwise be fatal. Artisans shaped these plates with care, often adding subtle curves to deflect strikes or ornate designs to signify status. Many knights commissioned engraved or gilded breastplates, transforming their armor into both a shield and a canvas, a silent declaration of skill, wealth, and taste. The beauty of these plates was matched only by their purpose: survival in a world where a single miscalculation could mean death. Gauntlets and greaves extended protection to the hands and legs, areas once considered vulnerable. Articulated plates covered fingers, allowing the knight to grasp a sword hilt with confidence. Greaves shielded shins and calves, absorbing strikes while maintaining the flexibility needed for running, kneeling, or mounting a horse. Every joint, strap, and rivet was part of a delicate balance between protection and mobility, reflecting centuries of trial, error, and innovation. A knight's shield complemented his armor, serving both defensive and symbolic purposes. Shields were painted with coats of arms, heraldic symbols that communicated family identity, rank, and allegiance. In battle, a shield was a moving canvas, a herald of valor, that announced the knight's presence on the field. In tournaments, shields added pageantry, turning each engagement into both sport and ceremony. The combination of armor and shield created a nearly impervious silhouette, a moving testament to human ingenuity and discipline. It is fascinating to consider the craftsmanship behind every suit of armor. Armorers were highly skilled artisans, often apprenticing for years before mastering the delicate art of forging, shaping, and assembling plates. Each suit was custom made, designed to fit the knight like a second skin. The process involved measuring the wearer, cutting and hammering metal, riveting plates together, and polishing until the steel shone like moonlight on a still lake. Some suits were enhanced with leather, chainmail, or padding underneath, absorbing impact and increasing comfort. The creation of armor was both a science and an art, a marriage of practicality and beauty. Armor also evolved according to combat needs. Knights fighting on foot required flexibility and lighter construction, while cavalry knights prioritized protection against lance strikes and mounted opponents. Innovations such as hinged joints, reinforced elbows, and layered plating emerged over centuries of experimentation. Some suits included hidden spikes or reinforced points designed to give the wearer an edge in close combat. Even the weight distribution was considered, ensuring that knights could fight for hours without exhausting themselves prematurely. Beyond function, armor carried social and cultural meaning. A well-crafted suit signaled wealth, training, and nobility. It represented centuries of family heritage and the wearer's dedication to the code of chivalry. Knights often displayed their armor in ceremonies, parades, and tournaments, where the gleam of steel caught the sun and awed spectators. In quiet moments, before battle or after a long day of training, the armor reminded the knight of his responsibility, discipline, and the community of warriors to which he belonged. The process of donning armor was a ritual in itself. Imagine a squire helping a knight into each piece, fastening straps, securing plates, adjusting gauntlets, and finally lowering the helmet into place. The transformation was gradual and deliberate, turning a man into a nearly mythical figure, a protector clad in metal, ready to face danger with courage and poise. The weight of the armor was not only physical, but symbolic, carrying centuries of tradition, expectations, and honor. Armor also adapted to different climates and regions. In colder northern regions, padding and layered mail provided warmth in addition to protection. In southern territories, lighter armor allowed for heat dissipation while still offering defense against arrows, swords, and spears. Knights often personalized their armor, adding crests, insignia, and even religious symbols, creating a visual statement of identity that complemented their martial skill. Even after the decline of traditional knighthood with the rise of gunpowder, armor left a lasting legacy. It inspired art, literature, and culture, becoming a symbol of valor, discipline, and the human desire to combine form with function. Museums today display these works of craftsmanship, but imagining a knight walking through a morning mist, clad in gleaming steel, is enough to bring the medieval world to life in your mind. As you allow this imagery to settle, picture the slow, careful process of donning a suit of armor. Feel the smooth metal against your skin, the leather straps tightening with precision, and the subtle sounds of moving plates. Imagine the quiet reflection of a night before battle, the world narrowed to the rhythm of breath, the weight of responsibility, and the steadfast resolve to uphold honor, courage, and duty. Allow yourself to drift along this rhythmic cadence, letting the metal, the history, and the quiet dignity of the night fill your mind with calm and wonder. Armor was more than protection. It was identity, artistry, and discipline, a harmonious blend of form and function that mirrored the soul of the night inside. And as we let this vision rest in the mind, we prepare to explore the next element of the knight's existence, the helmet, in more intimate detail, along with the shield, weapons, and the stories that brought them to life, each piece a silent witness to centuries of courage, loyalty, and human ingenuity. The helmet, close your eyes and imagine the soft glow of torchlight flickering against a row of helmets lined along the wooden walls of a castle armory. Each helmet rests silently, a sentinel in metal, waiting for the knight who will don it and carry it into the world. The helmet is more than a piece of armor. It is both shield and identity, protecting the mind and symbolizing the courage, skill, and lineage of the warrior who wears it. Tonight, we explore the remarkable history, design, and subtle intricacies of the knight's helmet, a piece of equipment as fascinating as the men it served. In the earliest days of knighthood, helmets were simple and functional. Leather and iron were molded into basic shapes to cover the skull and provide protection against arrows, sword strikes, and blunt force. These early helmets were sometimes conical, designed to deflect blows, with a nasal bar to guard the face. While practical, they offered limited protection for the eyes and mouth, requiring the wearer to rely on vigilance, skill, and instinct to survive in battle. By the 12th century, the great helm emerged, a cylindrical design that fully enclosed the head. Imagine a knight lowering such a helmet over his head, feeling the weight settle across his shoulders and the cool iron against his skin. The great helm offered unprecedented protection, shielding the face, jaw, and skull from cutting and piercing weapons. Ventilation holes allowed for breathing, though they also muffled sound and limited visibility. In this way, the helmet became not just armor, but a challenge to see, hear, and fight effectively while encased in steel. As time progressed, knights sought a balance between protection and functionality. Visors were introduced, hinged plates that could be raised or lowered at will. Picture a knight lifting his visor to greet a squire or observing a distant enemy before lowering it again to plunge into the heat of battle. The visor allowed vision, communication, and breathability without sacrificing defense, demonstrating the careful engineering and attention to detail that characterized medieval armor design. Helmets were also a canvas for artistry and symbolism. Crests, plumes of feathers, engraved motifs, and gilded details conveyed status, lineage, and allegiance. A knight's helmet could indicate family heritage, regional identity, or even personal achievements. In tournaments, these visual markers allowed spectators to recognize individual knights and added pageantry to each contest. On the battlefield, the decorations served as a psychological tool, inspiring allies and intimidating foes, demonstrating that armor was as much about perception as protection. The weight of a helmet is often underestimated. Early great helms could weigh anywhere from 5 to 10 pounds. That weight rested on the neck and shoulders, subtly testing endurance and posture. Knights learned to move fluidly, to fight with headgear that could obscure peripheral vision, and to maintain composure, even under prolonged strain. The act of wearing a helmet became a form of meditation, a merging of body, mind, and responsibility. Some helmets featured ingenious adaptations to address specific needs. Eyepieces allowed for slits that provided focus without excessive exposure, while ventilation systems prevented overheating during long campaigns or tournaments. Interior padding was essential, cushioning blows and providing comfort for hours of wear. Leather liners, wool padding, and chainmail coifs worked together to create a protective cocoon, demonstrating the sophistication of medieval armorers who considered not just survival, but the daily realities of a knight's life. Helmets were also a form of identity in combat. In the chaos of battle, where dust, smoke, and noise blurred vision, the helmet's shape, decoration, and markings allowed allies to recognize one another and distinguish friend from foe. Heraldic symbols, painted or etched onto the metal, became vital tools in strategy, communication, and morale, transforming a simple piece of iron into a beacon of loyalty and lineage. The ceremonial aspect of helmets should not be overlooked. Knights were often presented with their helmets during dubbing ceremonies, the act signifying their transformation from squire to warrior. Some helmets bore inscriptions, blessings, or religious symbols, connecting the knight to faith as well as martial duty. In tournaments and parades, helmets glimmered in sunlight, casting reflections that symbolized the honor and courage of the wearer. They were not merely functional, they were emblematic of aspiration, discipline, and societal ideals. Consider the practical versatility of the helmet. A knight might remove the visor to speak with a fellow warrior, then lower it in the heat of battle to protect against a sudden sword strike. Helmets were adaptable, evolving to match the style of warfare, the threats of the battlefield, and the needs of individual knights. In some cases, helmets incorporated chainmail aventails, curtains of interlinked rings, that protected the neck and shoulders, blending the flexibility of mail with the strength of plate. Despite their protective qualities, helmets imposed challenges. Vision was limited, hearing muffled, and weight constant. Knights, trained specifically to fight while armored, learning to sense movements, anticipate threats, and rely on instinct and discipline. The helmet became not a burden, but a companion, a tactile reminder of duty, responsibility, and courage. Each dent, scratch, or mark told a story of survival, skill, and resilience, a record etched in steel rather than on parchment. Helmets were also tailored to individual combat roles. Heavy cavalry might use reinforced visors and full face coverage for jousts, while foot soldiers or skirmishers favored lighter designs for mobility. Some helmets included movable nasal guards or pivoting plates, allowing adaptation in real-time combat scenarios. Every design reflected careful observation of battlefield realities, testing, and centuries of refinement. The quiet rituals surrounding helmets were equally significant. A squire would assist the knight in fitting, adjusting, and securing the helmet, creating a moment of intimacy and preparation. In the stillness before battle, the knight would take a deep breath, feel the weight settle, and let the armor, including the helmet, become a part of him. This moment, often unnoticed in the chaos of history, reflects the mindfulness and discipline of knighthood, the merging of body, mind, and purpose. Finally, helmets serve as enduring symbols today. In museums, they glint softly under artificial lights, echoing stories of courage, honor, and survival. In literature and film, they evoke the mystery, strength, and pageantry of knights long past. And in your imagination, you can see the knight raising his visor slowly, eyes focused and resolute, the morning sun glinting across polished steel, ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead, guided by training, courage, and the ideals of chivalry. As you let these images settle, allow yourself to feel the weight of the helmet, the calm focus it represents, and the centuries of tradition embedded in its cold, smooth metal. Picture the soft clink of armor as the knight moves, the careful adjustment of straps, and the serene confidence that comes from preparation and discipline. Drift with these visions, feeling the rhythm of medieval life, the quiet dignity of the knight, and the steadfast protection of the helmet, guiding both mind and body through a world of challenges. The shield, close your eyes and picture the gentle morning light filtering through a castle armory. Dust motes floating lazily in the air, and rows of shields leaning quietly against the stone walls. Each shield tells a story of battles fought, loyalties pledged, and the intricate artistry of a world where function met symbolism. Tonight, we explore the shield, one of the most fascinating and versatile pieces of a knight's arsenal, a companion that protected not only the body, but the honor, identity, and spirit of the warrior who wielded it. From the earliest days of mounted warfare, the shield was an essential tool. Imagine a young squire lifting a wooden board, reinforced with leather, and strapping it to his arm for the first time. Even in its simplest form, the shield provided a critical layer of defense, absorbing arrows, deflecting sword strikes, and giving the wielder a sense of security in the unpredictable chaos of battle. The shape and size varied. Round shields offered maneuverability. Kite shields provided extended protection for the torso and legs, and later, smaller, lighter shields allowed for greater speed and precision during duels and tournaments. Shields were more than protective gear. They were a canvas for identity. Heraldic symbols, painted or engraved on the surface, communicated family lineage, allegiance to a lord, or participation in a particular campaign. Picture a knight marching across the battlefield, his shield glinting in the sun, emblazoned with a lion, a cross, or a set of elegant patterns that signaled not only who he was, but what he represented. In this way, shields became both functional tools and instruments of communication, allowing allies to recognize one another amidst the smoke, dust, and confusion of combat. The materials and construction of shields were equally fascinating. Early shields were primarily wood, often reinforced with iron rims or covered in leather to prevent splintering. Some were layered with multiple types of wood, glued together to increase strength without adding excessive weight. The central boss, raised rounded portion in the center, protected the hand and allowed the shield to absorb or deflect blows. Each shield was carefully crafted, with weight, balance, and durability meticulously considered, reflecting centuries of refinement in medieval armory. Shields evolved alongside armor, adapting to changes in weaponry and tactics. As swords became sharper, lances longer, and arrows more powerful, shields were reinforced and redesigned. Kite-shaped shields provided coverage for mounted knights, protecting the left side of the body while leaving the right hand free for swordplay. Smaller, buckler-style shields allowed foot soldiers to parry and strike with speed. In every variation, the shield maintained its dual role: protection in combat and representation of identity, skill, and honor. The act of wielding a shield required strength, precision, and strategy. It was not merely a passive defense, but an active tool used to block, deflect, and even strike opponents. Imagine a knight raising his shield in a coordinated maneuver, angling it to intercept a sword swing, while simultaneously preparing to thrust forward with a lance or strike with a mace. The shield became an extension of the body, requiring practice, intuition, and a keen awareness of both ally and enemy positions. In this sense, the shield was as much a part of the knight as his own arms and legs. Heraldic symbolism on shields carried profound meaning. Colors, shapes, and emblems followed strict conventions, with each design carefully chosen to convey lineage, rank, and achievements. Lions signified courage, eagles represented swiftness or vigilance, and crosses indicated religious devotion. Shields were displayed not only in battle, but also in tournaments, parades, and ceremonial occasions. The gleam of paint, polished metal, and gilded edges transformed a defensive tool into a visual statement, commanding respect and inspiring awe among allies and spectators alike. Shields also had practical psychological effects. Seeing a well-crafted, brightly decorated shield advancing on the battlefield could intimidate foes, creating the impression of discipline, wealth, and formidable skill. Conversely, shields provided confidence to the knight who carried them, offering a tangible sense of safety and the ability to control the flow of combat. In moments of tension, the weight and texture of the shield against the arm, the sound of metal clashing, and the rhythm of movement became a meditative focus, helping the knight maintain composure in the chaos of war. Tournaments brought shields to life in a different way. Unlike battlefield combat, tournaments emphasized spectacle, skill, and pageantry. Shields were displayed with pride, often coordinated with the knight's armor and heraldic symbols. The visual artistry of the shield was as important as its practical function. and the creativity of knights and craftsmen turned these objects into moving works of art. In jousts, duels, and mock battles, shields became central to the drama, reflecting not only martial ability, but also the ideals of chivalry, honor, courage, and fair play. The preparation and maintenance of shields was a ritualistic process. Leather was treated, metal polished, and wooden surfaces inspected for cracks. Straps and handles were checked for integrity, ensuring the shield would respond reliably during combat. Imagine a squire gently rubbing oil into the leather, tightening straps, and carefully aligning a shield's boss so that it could withstand the pressures of battle. Every shield was a personalized tool, tailored to the knight who would carry it, embodying both craftsmanship and trust. Beyond combat, shields carried cultural and symbolic significance. They were often displayed in great halls, hung on walls alongside banners and tapestries, serving as reminders of past victories and ancestral valor. Some shields bore inscriptions, mottos, or prayers, merging protection with spirituality. The shield thus became a bridge between the practical, the artistic, and the moral, a piece of equipment that defended the body, declared identity, and reinforced ideals. Even in quiet moments, the shield held meaning. Before battle, a knight might grip the shield's straps, feeling its solid weight, reflecting on the duty it represented, and drawing calm from its presence. The shield was both companion and protector, a constant reminder of the responsibilities, values, and traditions that defined knighthood. Its utility extended beyond offense and defense, embodying discipline, preparation, and the mindful integration of function and form. As you allow these images to settle, imagine walking along a castle hallway lined with shields of every shape and color. Picture the sunlight glinting off polished surfaces, the crests telling stories of lineage, bravery, and loyalty. Visualize a knight stepping forward, shield raised, moving with fluidity and confidence, every motion guided by training, intuition, and the code of chivalry. Let this vision flow slowly, like a gentle current, wrapping you in the rhythm, artistry, and history of the medieval world. The sword, close your eyes, and imagine the soft gleam of steel reflecting the morning sun, the delicate balance between weight and sharpness, and the quiet reverence with which a knight lifts his sword. The sword was far more than a weapon. It was a symbol, an extension of the knight's arm, and a reflection of his skill, honor, and lineage. Tonight, we explore the world of the knight's sword, its craftsmanship, history, and the deep connection between warrior and blade. In the earliest days of medieval Europe, swords were crafted from iron, gradually evolving into steel as metallurgical techniques improved. Imagine a blacksmith at his forge, the air thick with heat and the rhythmic pounding of hammer on anvil. Each sword began as a glowing strip of metal, folded and hammered repeatedly to create strength, flexibility, and durability. The process required patience, precision, and intimate knowledge of the materials. A well-crafted sword could last decades, becoming a treasured heirloom passed from father to son, a silent witness to generations of knights and battles. The design of swords varied according to purpose. The arming sword, a single-handed weapon, was light and versatile, designed to be used with a shield. Its blade could slash, thrust, and parry, making it ideal for the rapid maneuvers of mounted combat. The longsword, often wielded with two hands, allowed for greater leverage and powerful strikes, capable of cutting through armor or unbalancing an opponent. Even daggers and short blades had their place, used for close encounters or as secondary weapons when a sword was impractical. Each sword was tailored to the needs, strength, and style of its knight, a reflection of both martial skill and personal preference. The sword was also a tool of ceremony and symbolism. Imagine the moment when a young squire is dubbed a knight. The lord lifts a sword and gently taps it on each shoulder. This simple gesture transforms a boy into a warrior, linking him to centuries of tradition, honor, and responsibility. Swords were inscribed with mottos, religious symbols, or intricate engravings, creating a connection between the martial and the spiritual. They were not merely tools of violence, but artifacts of identity, devotion, and aspiration. Crafting a sword required both technical skill and artistry. The blade had to be tempered to achieve the perfect balance between hardness and flexibility. Too brittle, and it would snap under pressure. Too soft, and it would bend or fail. The hilt, guard, and pommel were carefully designed to provide grip, protect the hand, and balance the blade. Some swords were adorned with precious metals, gems, or inscriptions, elevating them from functional tools to objects of beauty and status. The act of wielding such a sword connected the knight to centuries of craftsmanship, heritage, and culture. The relationship between knight and sword was intimate. Knights often named their swords, treating them with respect and care. Sharpening, cleaning, and storing the blade became daily rituals, moments of reflection that reinforced discipline and mindfulness. The sword was an extension of the body, requiring skill, timing, and instinct. A well-trained knight could parry a strike, deliver a precise thrust, or perform intricate maneuvers that seemed almost like a dance, where the blade moved in harmony with the knight's body and mind. Swords also evolved to meet the changing demands of warfare. As armor became heavier, blades were designed to exploit gaps in protection, with tapered points for thrusting and reinforced edges for cutting. Some swords were crafted specifically for mounted combat, long enough to reach enemies from horseback, while others were optimized for foot soldiers in close quarters. The adaptability of the sword mirrored the adaptability of the knight, both learning and evolving to meet the challenges of their world. The use of the sword extended beyond combat. Swords were central in duels, tournaments, and demonstrations of skill. In tournaments, knights displayed not only their power, but also precision, strategy, and composure under pressure. The sword became a symbol of honor and fair play, governed by the same principles that shaped chivalry, courage, loyalty, and restraint. Each strike, parry, and maneuver was a reflection of training, ethics, and tradition, emphasizing that true skill was as much about wisdom as strength. Imagine a knight walking quietly through the morning mist, sword sheathed, reflecting on past battles, victories, and lessons learned. The weight of the weapon is reassuring, a tactile reminder of duty and responsibility. In moments of meditation or prayer, the sword becomes a symbol of inner strength, connecting the knight to values that transcend the chaos of war. It is a companion, protector, and guide, a silent witness to courage and integrity in both battle and daily life. Swords also carried stories. Many were passed down through generations, their edges marked by centuries of use, repair, and care. Each nick or scratch told a tale of survival, confrontation, or victory. Some swords bore inscriptions, prayers, or blessings, believed to grant protection or strength to the wielder. The sword was thus both practical and mystical, merging skill, faith, and tradition into a single, elegant object. Even in modern times, the sword remains iconic. It embodies courage, discipline, and honor, inspiring stories, art, and imagination. But in the quiet of the medieval armory, or on the misty battlefield, it was much more than a symbol. It was life itself. The way a sword was held, swung, and cared for reflected a knight's training, values, and identity. It was a living extension of skill, patience, and character. As you let this vision settle in your mind, picture the gentle gleam of the blade, the firm grip of the hilt, and the knight's steady movements, each deliberate, controlled, and purposeful. Imagine the quiet moments of sharpening and polishing, the careful inspection, the meditative ritual that connects the warrior to his craft. Let the rhythm of these actions lull your mind like a gentle wave, carrying you through centuries of tradition, skill, and honor. Pole arms and lances, close your eyes and picture the soft dawn mist drifting over a vast medieval battlefield. The distant sound of hooves echoing like gentle drum beats, and the glint of polished steel catching the first light of morning. Beyond swords and shields, the knight's arsenal included a fascinating array of polearms and lances, weapons designed not only for power, but for reach, precision, and strategic mastery. Tonight, we explore the history, design, and artistry of these long-reaching instruments of combat, imagining the rhythm and grace with which knights wielded them. The lance is perhaps the most iconic of all polearms. Mounted on horseback, the knight gripped this long, tapered spear with both hands, aligning body, horse, and weapon into a single, fluid motion. Picture a knight charging across an open field, the lance poised, horse galloping with disciplined power, and the tip aimed precisely at the opponent's shield or armor. The combination of speed, weight, and technique allowed a single strike to deliver tremendous force, often capable of unseating a rival or breaking the lines of infantry. Lances were crafted with careful attention to length, balance, and strength. Wooden shafts, often made of ash for flexibility and resilience, were reinforced at the tip with hardened steel points. Some lances included blunted tips for training or tournament use, while others were sharpened for battle. Leather grips or rings provided control, ensuring that the knight could direct the weapon with precision even under the tremendous forces generated by a full charge. In this way, the lance became a seamless extension of both rider and mount, requiring harmony, timing, and skill. Pole arms, including halberds, glaives, and spears, complemented the lance by offering versatility in both mounted and foot combat. Halberds combined an axe blade, a spike, and a hook, allowing the knight to thrust, slash, or pull opponents from horses or behind shields. Glaives were long blades on poles, optimized for reach and slicing power, while spears provided simple, effective thrusting capability in formation combat. Each weapon required dedicated training, for the technique differed subtly depending on weight, length, and the dynamics of mounted or foot warfare. The use of polearms emphasized strategy and teamwork. Imagine a formation of knights and foot soldiers advancing together, spears and halberds held in coordinated ranks, creating an almost impenetrable wall of steel. The rhythm of advancing, thrusting, and maintaining spacing was precise, a choreography that combined discipline, intuition, and collective coordination. Polearms were not only instruments of individual skill, but tools of organized tactical warfare, enabling knights to control space, pressure enemies, and dominate the battlefield with both reach and force. In tournaments, lances and polearms became instruments of spectacle as well as skill. Jousting, perhaps the most celebrated of medieval competitions, showcased the elegance and precision of the lance. Knights would charge along a narrow track, aiming to strike a target or unseat their opponent, while spectators marveled at the synchronization of horse, rider, and weapon. The lance, in this context, symbolized not only martial ability, but also the ideals of chivalry, courage, composure, and honor under pressure. Each tilt was an exercise in timing, judgment, and control, echoing centuries of refinement in the art of mounted combat. The engineering behind polearms was remarkable. Balance was critical. Too heavy, and the weapon became unwieldy. Too light, and it lacked the momentum to deliver effective force. Shafts were carefully selected and treated, sometimes reinforced with metal bands or rings, and tips were tempered to maintain sharpness while resisting breakage. Artisans understood the physics of leverage, weight distribution, and impact, creating weapons that were as effective as they were elegant. Every strike carried centuries of experimentation, observation, and craftsmanship. Polearms also reflected social and regional variations. In Northern Europe, halberds became increasingly popular, combining practicality and multifunctionality for both cavalry and infantry. In southern regions, lighter, more agile spears were favored for skirmishes or rapid maneuvers. Lances were longer in tournaments to allow dramatic unseatings, while battlefield lances balanced length with control to avoid vulnerability. Each adaptation tells a story of the environment, tactics, and evolving warfare, illustrating the interplay between culture, geography, and technology in the medieval world. The skill of wielding pole arms demanded discipline and physical endurance. Knights trained daily, practicing thrusts, swings, and blocks with precision. Coordination with the horse was essential for mounted weapons, while timing, stance, and anticipation were critical in foot combat. A knight had to judge distance, angle, and momentum, all while maintaining awareness of allies, terrain, and the unpredictable actions of the enemy. Polearms required patience and control as much as strength, rewarding the disciplined and punishing the reckless. These weapons were also carriers of identity and status. Lances, halberds, and spears could be adorned with banners, paint, or insignia, signaling allegiance, family heritage, or accomplishments. In tournaments, these decorations added spectacle, transforming martial practice into pageantry, where skill and artistry merged seamlessly. Even on the battlefield, visual markers communicated rank and affiliation, enhancing cohesion and morale among allies. Imagine a knight standing quietly in a morning mist, lance in hand, eyes focused, horse steady. The weight of the weapon, the tension of muscle, and the balance of horse and rider create a unity of body and mind. Each movement is deliberate, rehearsed, and precise. The weapon is more than steel and wood. It is a connection to training, heritage, and the ideals of chivalry. It is an extension of intention, courage, and skill, ready to serve in both battle and ceremonial display. Maintenance of polearms was a meticulous process. Shafts were inspected for cracks, points sharpened, and grips oiled. Each weapon was prepared for combat or tournament, ensuring reliability and effectiveness. The care and attention devoted to these weapons reflect the broader discipline of the knight's life. Every tool, every piece of equipment carried both practical and symbolic importance, contributing to identity, readiness, and honor. As you allow these images to drift through your mind, picture the rhythmic cadence of lances in formation, the elegant arcs of halberds in practice, and the quiet focus of knights training before the day's battle. Let the long reach, the careful balance, and the subtle artistry of these weapons fill your imagination like gentle waves washing over a calm shore. The polearms and lances are not merely tools, they are extensions of courage, precision, and the timeless pursuit of mastery. The horse close your eyes and picture the morning mist lifting from a quiet meadow, dew sparkling on the grass, and the rhythmic sound of hooves softly striking the earth. The knight's horse was more than a mode of transportation. It was a partner, a symbol of strength and nobility, and a vital element in the life and success of the medieval warrior. Tonight, we explore the world of the knight's horse, its training, care, and the profound bond between rider and steed that shaped the very essence of knighthood. From the earliest days of mounted warfare, horses were carefully selected for their size, strength, temperament, and agility. A knight's mount, often referred to as a destrier, was a large, powerful horse bred for the chaos and intensity of battle. Imagine a young destrier in a stable, muscles rippling beneath its sleek coat, nostrils flaring, and eyes alert as it senses the energy of its surroundings. These horses were trained from a young age, learning to respond to subtle shifts in weight, reins, and leg pressure, creating a partnership that allowed rider and mount to move as one. Training a knight's horse was a slow, deliberate process, often beginning when the foal was only a few months old. The colt learned basic commands, balance, and obedience, gradually progressing to more complex maneuvers. By the time a young knight mounted for the first time, the horse was already accustomed to weight, movement, and the subtle cues of its rider. Imagine the patience required, the repeated drills, the gentle correction of mistakes, and the eventual emergence of a graceful, responsive creature ready to carry a heavily armored warrior into battle. A knight's relationship with his horse was deeply personal. The destrier was more than a tool. It was a companion, trained to trust and respond to its rider, even in the chaos of combat. Knights often spent hours grooming, feeding, and caring for their mounts, creating a bond that was both practical and emotional. The rhythm of brushing mane and tail, the soft murmurs of reassurance, and the careful inspection of hooves and tack fostered trust and understanding between horse and rider. This bond could mean the difference between life and death on the battlefield, where a responsive horse allowed the knight to execute maneuvers with precision and grace. Horses were trained to withstand the shocks of battle. They needed to remain calm amid the clashing of steel, the screams of men, and the chaos of horses charging. Imagine a knight on horseback, lance poised, shield raised as the enemy approaches. The horse remains steady, guided by instinct, training, and the quiet commands of its rider. The ability of the destrier to charge, turn, and maintain composure under such circumstances reflects centuries of selective breeding and careful instruction, blending physical strength with mental resilience. The armor of the knight extended to the horse as well. Known as barding, horse armor protected vital areas such as the head, chest, and flanks. Some barding was fully plated with steel, while other designs used padded leather or chainmail, balancing protection with mobility. Imagine the soft clinking of a metal as the knight adjusts the barding, the leather straps secured with care, the horse moving with both elegance and power. Barding was not only functional, but ceremonial, often decorated with colors, heraldic symbols, and designs that matched the knight's armor, creating a visual unity that impressed both allies and adversaries. Horses also played a central role in tournaments where their agility, responsiveness, and training were tested in precise, choreographed displays. Jousting, in particular, demanded exceptional skill from both rider and horse. Picture a knight and destrier lining up at the tilt barrier, lance poised, eyes focused, and heart steady. The horse surges forward at full speed, guided by subtle cues from the rider, carrying the knight toward his opponent with fluidity and power. The synchronization of rider and mount becomes a dance of precision, strength, and mutual trust, captivating spectators and reinforcing the ideals of skill, discipline, and courage. Different breeds were used for different purposes. The destrier was the war horse, tall, muscular, and capable of carrying heavy armor. The courser was a lighter, faster horse, ideal for scouting, raiding, or pursuit. Palfreys, prized for their smooth gait and elegance, were often used for travel or ceremonial purposes. Each type of horse was carefully matched to the role it would play, reflecting the strategic thinking, practicality, and attention to detail that characterized knighthood. Caring for a horse was a full-time responsibility. Feeding, grooming, cleaning stables, and inspecting hooves were daily rituals. Horses were given time to rest, water, and recover, especially after training or battle. This careful attention ensured the longevity and reliability of the mount, fostering a deep partnership built on trust and mutual dependence. Knights understood that a well cared for horse was not only a weapon of war, but a companion whose life was intertwined with their own. The symbolism of the knight's horse extended beyond the practical. Horses represented status, nobility, and the power of mounted warriors in medieval society. To see a knight on a destrier, fully armored and bearing a lance, was to witness an embodiment of courage, discipline, and authority. Horses were celebrated in literature, art, and folklore, immortalizing their role in shaping both warfare and culture. Imagine the knight walking beside his destrier in the quiet of dawn, running his hand along its neck, feeling the rhythm of its breathing and sensing the connection forged through years of training and care. The horse is a living extension of the knight, responding to commands, sharing burdens, and embodying the harmony of strength and grace. Allow this vision to fill your mind with calm, the steady heartbeat of horse and rider echoing like a gentle drum in the vast stillness of the medieval world. The daily life of a knight. Close your eyes and picture the soft glow of dawn spilling through the windows of a medieval castle, the quiet stirrings of servants preparing for the day, and the rhythmic clatter of hooves as knights ready themselves for training or duty. The life of a knight was not defined solely by battles or tournaments. It was a structured existence of discipline, responsibility, and ritual, where every action contributed to mastery, honor, and the code of chivalry. Tonight, we explore the daily rhythms, routines, and subtle moments that composed the life of a medieval knight, imagining the steady, deliberate pace of each day. The day often began with prayer and reflection. Knights were expected to embody both martial skill and moral integrity, and quiet moments of meditation, prayer, or attendance at chapel services were central to maintaining spiritual focus. Picture a knight kneeling in the soft light of the castle chapel, the air faintly scented with incense, whispering prayers for courage, wisdom, and protection. These rituals were as much about inner discipline as they were about faith, setting the tone for the hours ahead. Breakfast was a measured affair, often simple but nourishing. Knights consumed porridge, bread, cheese, and sometimes meat, accompanied by ale or watered wine. Meals were communal, shared with fellow knights, squires, or retainers, fostering camaraderie and conversation. During breakfast, plans for the day might be discussed, training schedules, inspections of armor and weapons, or duties assigned by the Lord. Even in these mundane moments, the rhythm of responsibility and preparedness was ever present. Training formed the core of a knight's daily routine. Physical conditioning, weapon practice, and horsemanship were meticulously scheduled. Imagine a knight in the courtyard, practicing sword strikes, parries, and thrusts with focused precision, or adjusting the angle of a lance during a mounted drill. Archery, hand-to-hand combat, and endurance exercises complemented these routines. creating a comprehensive regimen designed to prepare the body for any eventuality. Each repetition built skill, confidence, and muscle memory, reinforcing the harmony of body, mind, and weapon. Beyond combat training, knights maintained their equipment and armor. Chainmail required careful oiling to prevent rust, leather straps needed treatment, and plate armor was polished until it gleamed. Weapons were sharpened, inspected, and repaired. Picture a knight's squire kneeling beside him, holding armor, while the knight meticulously tightens straps or examines a blade, ensuring that every element functions perfectly. This attention to detail reflected the broader discipline of knighthood, where preparation and care were inseparable from success in battle. Horsemanship occupied a significant portion of the day. Knights groomed their destriers, checked hooves for injuries, and trained in mounted combat. Imagine a knight adjusting the barding, checking the reins, and riding in precise formations with other knights, the rhythmic sound of hooves echoing through the castle grounds. Training ensured that horse and rider operated as a single, responsive unit, capable of executing complex maneuvers, charges, and tactical strategies on the battlefield. Knights also held administrative responsibilities, especially those tasked with managing lands, collecting taxes, or overseeing servants and soldiers. Imagine a knight poring over accounts, maps, or documents, planning logistics for resources, or mediating disputes among tenants. Intellectual skill was as vital as physical prowess, and a well-rounded knight balanced strategy, leadership, and decision-making alongside combat readiness. This duality of mind and body created a depth of character that defined the knightly ideal. Mealtimes offered moments of respite and reflection. Lunch and dinner were often richer affairs than breakfast, featuring roasted meats, bread, vegetables, and sometimes fruits or delicacies brought from distant lands. Dining was both nourishment and social ritual, where knights discussed strategy, recounted stories, and reinforced bonds with comrades and retainers. Even these ordinary moments were imbued with structure, etiquette, and a sense of tradition. Leisure was carefully balanced with duty. Knights might engage in hunting, falconry, or quiet study, all activities that honed skills useful in both war and governance. Hunting, for instance, improved tracking, patience, and strategic thinking, while falconry required precision, timing, and a keen understanding of the natural world. Reading, when available, offered insight into history, law, and philosophy, complementing martial education with intellectual growth. These activities, though seemingly recreational, reinforced discipline and cultivated the mind as well as the body. Evenings often brought reflection, prayer, and preparation for rest. Knights inspected armor, repaired weapons, and ensured that horses and stables were attended to. Quiet moments of meditation allowed the knight to process the day's lessons, accomplishments, and challenges. Picture a knight sitting alone in the flickering glow of a candle, hands resting on a sword, mind focused on honor, duty, and the code of chivalry that guided every action. Social interaction played a significant role in a knight's life. Feasts, ceremonies, and visits with lords, nobles, or other knights reinforced loyalty, alliances, and networks of power. Conversations, formal and informal, allowed knights to exchange knowledge, demonstrate etiquette, and cultivate relationships essential to both governance and military success. The rhythm of medieval social life intertwined seamlessly with martial and personal discipline, creating a holistic, interconnected existence. Knights also spent time mentoring squires, imparting skills, values, and guidance. Imagine a seasoned knight demonstrating a sword technique, correcting posture, or offering advice on strategy. These lessons ensured continuity of knowledge, reinforced traditions, and strengthened the sense of duty and mentorship that was central to knighthood. The training of the next generation was a quiet, enduring legacy woven into the daily life of every experienced knight. Nighttime brought rest, but often not immediately. Knights might walk the battlements, inspect fortifications, or stand guard. Even in these quiet hours, the rhythm of responsibility persisted. When sleep finally arrived, it was earned through a day of exertion, attention, and discipline, with dreams carrying echoes of training, strategy, and the ideals that shaped their waking lives. As you let this imagery drift through your mind, picture the castle at twilight, torches casting warm light, knights walking with measured steps, the soft neighing of horses in the stables, and the distant call of a night watch. The day of a knight, though filled with activity and responsibility, moves in steady, purposeful rhythms, each moment contributing to mastery, honor, and readiness. Allow this rhythm to lull your mind, carrying you gently into a state of calm reflection. The code of chivalry. Close your eyes and imagine the soft flicker of candlelight in a medieval hall, the quiet rustle of tapestries, and the serene stillness that settles over nights after a long day of training and duty. Beneath the armor, weapons, and pageantry, the essence of knighthood was defined by a profound moral and ethical framework known as the Code of Chivalry. Tonight, we explore this code, its principles, obligations, and the ways it guided a knight's life, shaping decisions, behavior, and character with a rhythm as deliberate and steady as the heartbeat of the medieval world. At its core, the Code of Chivalry emphasized courage, honor, loyalty, and courtesy. Courage was not simply the willingness to face physical danger, but the discipline to act rightly, even in fear, to uphold justice and protect the vulnerable. Imagine a knight standing at the edge of a battlefield, heart steady, mind focused, weighing the balance between valor and responsibility. This was courage tempered by wisdom, an essential principle guiding every action, whether in combat or in the quiet moments of governance. Honor was central to the chivalric ideal. A knight's reputation, honesty, and adherence to promises were paramount. Picture a knight pledging his word to a lord or committing to defend a village from threat. Breaking that word was unthinkable, for honor was both personal and social currency. It shaped interactions, influenced alliances, and reinforced the trust upon which the medieval world depended. Even in solitude, honor was an internal compass, guiding choices and maintaining alignment with ethical principles. Loyalty extended both upward and outward, Knights owed allegiance to their lord, their family, their comrades, and the principles of the code itself. Imagine a knight observing a commanding officer in the midst of strategy, ready to act on command while simultaneously upholding the rights and dignity of those under his protection. Loyalty was a living practice, manifested in fidelity, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to relationships and responsibilities. It bound the knight to a larger framework of duty, creating networks of trust, protection, and accountability. Courtesy, often associated with behavior toward women and the vulnerable, was a tangible expression of respect, humility, and restraint. Knights were expected to act with gentleness, fairness, and deference in appropriate circumstances, balancing strength with civility. Picture a knight bowing slightly in the presence of a lady, offering aid to a traveler, or mediating disputes with calm authority. Courtesy was a public demonstration of internal discipline, reflecting the integration of martial skill with moral character. The code of chivalry also encompassed protection of the weak and the defenseless. Knights were charged with defending peasants, clergy, and the innocent from harm. Imagine a knight patrolling the countryside, lance in hand, eyes vigilant, ensuring the safety of villages and travelers alike. This protective aspect of chivalry was not merely symbolic, it was an expectation embedded in the social structure, reinforcing the moral purpose of martial power. Knights were guided by religious principles as well. Christian faith shaped the ethical dimensions of chivalry, emphasizing humility, piety, and obedience to divine law. Prayer, attending Mass, and observing holy days were integral to daily life, aligning the knight's actions with a higher moral framework. Imagine a knight kneeling before a chapel altar, hands resting on a sword, seeking guidance, strength, and clarity. Faith and duty were intertwined, creating a spiritual underpinning that complemented the practical demands of knighthood. The rituals of chivalry reinforced these principles. Ceremonies such as the dubbing of a knight, oaths of loyalty, and public demonstrations of skill or courage all served to embody the ideals of the code. Picture a young squire being knighted, the sword resting lightly on his shoulders, vows spoken in measured tones, the audience witnessing the formal commitment to honor, courage, and duty. These rituals codified values into tangible acts, connecting personal ethics with public accountability. Chivalry extended to the conduct of war. Knights were expected to fight honorably, avoiding treachery or cruelty toward surrendered foes. Even in the chaos of battle, the code encouraged restraint, fairness, and the pursuit of justice. Picture a knight offering terms to a vanquished opponent, protecting civilians caught in the conflict, and balancing the ferocity of combat with ethical judgment. The code created a framework that humanized warfare, emphasizing integrity amid violence. Education and cultivation were also part of chivalric life. Knights were encouraged to study strategy, history, literature, and philosophy, blending intellectual growth with martial expertise. Imagine a knight reading illuminated manuscripts by candlelight, reflecting on lessons of past battles, or contemplating the moral dilemmas of leadership. This intellectual cultivation reinforced ethical judgment, decision making, and the refinement of character, balancing physical skill with wisdom. The code of chivalry also inspired art, literature, and storytelling. Tales of brave knights, noble deeds, and courtly love propagated ideals that shaped behavior and aspiration. Imagine a fireside in a castle, knights and squires listening to minstrels recount legendary exploits, absorbing lessons of valor, honor, and loyalty. These stories reinforced moral and ethical frameworks, creating cultural continuity and inspiring generations to uphold the chivalric ideal. Chivalry was not static, it adapted over time, reflecting societal changes, regional variations, and evolving expectations of knighthood. The principles remained consistent: courage, honor, loyalty, courtesy, and protection of the weak, yet their application shifted in response to warfare, politics, and culture, demonstrating the resilience and flexibility of the code. Imagine a knight navigating both the battlefield and courtly life, integrating ethical principles into every decision, action, and interaction. Even in moments of solitude, the code guided reflection and personal conduct. Knights considered their actions, motives, and responsibilities, using the principles of chivalry as a compass for behavior. Imagine a knight at twilight gazing across the landscape, pondering the alignment of choices with honor, courage, and duty. The rhythm of reflection, discipline, and ethical commitment shaped the interior life, complementing the visible achievements of skill, bravery, and leadership. As you let these visions settle in your mind, picture the quiet harmony of the medieval world as filtered through the lens of chivalry. Knights acting with courage, respecting their peers, protecting the weak, and aligning their hearts with both martial and moral purpose. Allow the rhythm of ethical reflection, structured discipline, and principled action to wash over you, carrying a sense of calm, focus, and timeless wisdom. The training and life of a squire. Close your eyes and imagine the quiet murmur of a medieval castle at dawn, the sunlight filtering through narrow windows, and the soft shuffle of young feet on cold stone floors. Before a boy could become a knight, he lived as a squire, a period of intense training, service, and education that shaped both body and character. Tonight, we explore the world of the squire, their daily routines, responsibilities, and the profound journey from apprentice to knight, where patience, discipline, and dedication transformed youth into the guardians of honor and chivalry. The life of a squire typically began around the age of 12 or 14, when boys were sent to serve a knight under whom they would learn the ways of combat, courtly manners, and martial responsibility. Imagine a young squire entering the armory, eyes wide at the rows of gleaming swords, shields, and armor, a mixture of awe and determination settling in his heart. The squire's education was rigorous, encompassing physical, intellectual, and ethical training, ensuring readiness for the multifaceted demands of knighthood. Daily routines were structured and deliberate. A squire's mornings often began with physical conditioning, running, climbing, or performing exercises to build strength, agility, and endurance. Imagine the rhythmic cadence of wooden swords clashing, leather armor softly squeaking, and the instructor correcting posture or footwork. These exercises were not merely about combat, they instilled discipline, focus, and resilience, qualities essential for both battlefield success and moral integrity. Following physical training, squires attended to their knight's equipment and armor, polishing plate, oiling chainmail, and inspecting swords and shields, taught meticulous attention to detail. Imagine a young squire carefully rubbing the surface of a helmet until it gleamed, tightening straps, and aligning every piece of armor. This labor was both practical and symbolic. It cultivated responsibility, patience, and respect for the tools that would one day protect their own life. Horsemanship formed another cornerstone of squire training. Young squires learned to ride, groom, and manage horses, gradually developing the coordination, balance, and confidence necessary for mounted combat. Picture a squire leading a destrier through the courtyard, adjusting reins, observing the animal's responses, and learning to anticipate its movements. The horse became both a teacher and a companion, guiding the squire in rhythm, intuition, and harmony, an essential skill for the future knight. Squires also participated in combat drills and weapon training. Under the guidance of their knight, they practiced sword play, lance thrusts, shield maneuvers, and even archery. Every repetition was a lesson in timing, precision, and strategy. Imagine a squire blocking, parrying, and striking, feeling the weight of the weapon, sensing the momentum of each movement, and gradually internalizing the mechanics of combat. This training was often exhausting, but it built confidence, endurance, and instinct, preparing the squire for the unpredictability of real battle. Service to the knight was a fundamental aspect of the squire's life. This included attending to the knight in daily matters, accompanying him to tournaments, and assisting on campaigns. Imagine a squire helping don armor, adjusting straps, or handing weapons to a knight before a joust. These tasks taught humility, attention, and loyalty, reinforcing the idea that knighthood was as much about service as it was about valor. Every small act, though seemingly routine, carried lessons in discipline, respect, and preparation. Education extended beyond physical skills. Squires were often instructed in reading, writing, and etiquette, particularly in the context of courtly life. They learned the codes of behavior, diplomacy, and communication necessary for interacting with nobles, clergy, and peers. Imagine a squire observing a banquet, noting gestures, language, and social cues, internalizing lessons that would later define his conduct in both battle and courtly society. Intellectual cultivation complemented martial prowess, reinforcing the ideal of a well-rounded knight. Ethics and moral instruction were central to a squire's formation. They studied the code of chivalry, absorbing lessons in courage, honor, loyalty, and courtesy. Imagine a squire reflecting quietly in the castle chapel, considering how to embody these principles in service, training, and daily life. The integration of moral guidance with practical skill ensured that the future knight was prepared to act with both strength and wisdom, balancing the demands of combat with the responsibilities of ethical conduct. Squires also observed and participated in tournaments, which offered opportunities for skill demonstration and public learning. Even without competing directly, squires watched the techniques, strategies, and etiquette of experienced knights. They learned to interpret movement, anticipate actions, and understand the dynamics of mounted and foot combat. Each tournament was a lesson in courage, composure, and strategy, reinforcing both physical training and mental acuity. Hunting and falconry were additional components of squire life. These activities honed patience, observation, and strategic thinking. Imagine a young squire tracking game through the forest, bow in hand, or releasing a trained falcon to soar and return with precision. These experiences nurtured discipline, awareness, and control, cultivating qualities that would later prove essential in both battle and leadership. The progression from squire to knight was gradual and deliberate, often taking several years. Each day added layers of skill, experience, and understanding, building the foundation of competence, courage, and character. Imagine the quiet satisfaction of completing a complex drill, the steady improvement in riding, the mastery of sword techniques, and the growing confidence in fulfilling both service and martial duties. These cumulative experiences transformed the boy into a warrior ready for the solemn ceremony of knighthood. Ceremony marked the culmination of a squire's journey. The dubbing ritual, where the squire knelt before his lord and received the accolade of knighthood, was the symbolic and public recognition of years of training, service, and moral cultivation. Imagine the weight of the sword on each shoulder, the solemn vows spoken, and the profound sense of purpose and honor instilled in the newly minted knight. It was both an ending and a beginning, bridging the world of apprenticeship with the responsibilities, privileges, and expectations of full knighthood. As you let these images settle, picture the rhythms of daily life for a squire, the clang of practice swords, the gentle clatter of hooves, the quiet care of armor and horses, and the serene moments of reflection and prayer. Each day is a mosaic of discipline, learning, and growth, building the foundation for a life of courage, honor, and service. Allow the structured, purposeful rhythm of squire life to drift through your mind, carrying a sense of calm, focus, and anticipation, like the soft unfolding of a story. Over time, castles and fortifications, close your eyes and imagine the soft glow of sunrise spilling over rolling hills, the distant sound of birdsong, and the imposing silhouette of a medieval castle rising above the landscape. Castles were more than stone structures. They were the heart of power, defense, and community in the medieval world. Tonight, we explore the intricate design, purpose, and life within castles and fortifications, imagining their silent strength, strategic brilliance, and the rhythmic hum of daily life that surrounded them. The earliest castles were simple earth and wood constructions, but over time they evolved into imposing stone fortresses. Picture the transition from a wooden motte and bailey to a stone keep, each layer of construction representing increased security, prestige, and permanence. These fortifications served as homes for lords and knights, centers of administration, and bastions against invaders. Their design reflected both practicality and status, blending defensive ingenuity with architectural elegance. Stone walls were thick and carefully constructed, designed to withstand siege engines, battering rams, and the force of arrows. Imagine walking along a curtain wall, feeling the solidity of the stone beneath your hands, noting the careful placement of each block and the strategic positioning of towers, battlements, and arrow slits. These elements created a layered defense, allowing defenders to observe, repel, and outmaneuver attackers while maintaining the safety of those inside. Towers were essential features of fortifications. Round towers resisted projectiles more effectively than square ones, while high vantage points allowed archers and sentries to survey the surrounding landscape. Imagine a knight climbing the spiral stairs of a tower, the air cool and still, eyes scanning for movement beyond the walls. The sense of alertness, preparedness, and the quiet anticipation of potential conflict was a constant rhythm in castle life, blending vigilance with the calm of disciplined routine. Gatehouses and drawbridges were both practical and symbolic. The main entrance was carefully defended, often with multiple gates, portcullises, and murder holes designed to deter and control intruders. Picture a drawbridge slowly lowering across a moat, the water reflecting the gray stone, while guards stand ready, their hands on weapons, eyes watchful. The gatehouse was a threshold between safety and danger, marking the boundary of power and authority, a controlled point where strategy and engineering merged seamlessly. Inside the castle, life was structured around both duty and domesticity. Courtyards provided space for training, exercises, and gatherings, while halls and chambers served as centers of administration, feasting, and social interaction. Imagine a squire carrying water to polish armor, a knight discussing strategy with his lord, and servants quietly tending fires or preparing meals. The castle was a microcosm of medieval life, combining military readiness with daily routines, social hierarchy, and cultural continuity. Defensive features extended beyond the walls. Moats, ditches, and natural terrain were integrated into the fortification, creating obstacles for would-be attackers. Imagine the castle perched atop a hill, surrounded by a deep moat, its walls reflecting sunlight and the gentle sound of water moving through channels. Every element, from location to construction, was carefully considered to maximize security, control access, and project strength to allies and enemies alike. Battlements and crenellations allowed defenders to launch missiles while remaining protected. Imagine the rhythmic thrum of archers drawing and releasing arrows, the soft clatter of stones dropped from machicolations, and the disciplined coordination of soldiers using the architecture to their advantage. Every notch, ledge, and overhang was designed for efficiency, combining practical defense with the visual impression of strength and order. Castles were also centers of administration and governance. Lords oversaw lands, collected taxes, resolved disputes, and maintained order from within these walls. Imagine a scribe recording accounts, a steward managing supplies, and a knight advising on matters of law and protection. The castle was both a home and a hub of power, where martial skill, strategy, and social responsibility intersected. Daily life within the castle included both work and ceremony, feasts, religious observances, and entertainment balanced the routines of training, maintenance, and vigilance. Picture a great hall filled with the scent of roasted meats, the sound of conversation, and the gleam of polished armor displayed proudly on walls. These moments reflected status, wealth, and culture, reinforcing the social hierarchy and ideals of knighthood while providing respite from the constant demands of duty. Siegecraft shaped both castle design and military strategy. Knights and engineers anticipated threats, designing walls to resist siege engines, towers to allow crossfire, and moats to hinder attackers. Imagine the calm determination as stones are placed, defenses tested, and tactics planned with meticulous attention to detail. Castles were living fortresses, evolving in response to both technology and strategy, embodying centuries of experience and ingenuity. Architecture often blended beauty with strength. Gothic windows, decorative stonework, and heraldic displays adorned functional structures. Picture the soft light streaming through a stained glass window, illuminating the hall, while knights move with purpose through corridors and stairwells. Even in structures designed primarily for defense, aesthetic consideration reflected status, pride, and the human desire to combine utility with artistry. Castle interiors were carefully organized. Chambers for sleeping, dining, and administration were distinct from armories, stables, and workshops. Imagine a knight descending from a private chamber to inspect weapons, followed by a squire tending to the horse stables. All movements coordinated within a space that balanced functionality, hierarchy, and rhythm. This structure created order, efficiency, and a sense of calm, essential in a world where preparation and vigilance were paramount. Moats, curtain walls, and outer bailies were often integrated into defensive strategy. The layout channeled attackers into narrow, controlled zones, allowing defenders to focus force where needed. Imagine observing an approaching army from the top of a tower. The geometric precision of the fortification guiding strategy and offering reassurance. Every architectural choice, from wall thickness to tower placement, was a calculated decision reflecting centuries of refinement in military engineering. Castles also served symbolic purposes. They projected power, wealth, and authority to allies and rivals alike. The imposing silhouette of a stone keep atop a hill communicated control, stability, and readiness. Picture a knight standing on the battlements, gazing across the lands, aware that the castle represents both protection and influence, its presence weaving together the physical, social, and psychological dimensions of power. As you let these images settle, imagine walking through the quiet corridors, climbing the towers, and observing the rhythm of life within the walls. Hear the distant clatter of training, the murmur of conversation, the soft neighing of horses, and the gentle footsteps of those who maintain and protect the fortress. The castle is alive with purpose, structure, and history, a sanctuary of both defense and culture, where knights, squires, and servants coexist in harmony and order. Siege weapons and tactics, close your eyes and picture the quiet anticipation of dawn on a medieval battlefield, the mist curling over fields, and the looming silhouette of a castle under siege. Beyond knights, swords, and horses, warfare relied on a complex array of siege weapons and tactics, ingeniously designed to breach fortifications, subdue defenders, and tip the balance of power. Tonight, we explore these devices, their engineering, strategy, and the disciplined choreography of medieval siegecraft, imagining the tension, precision, and patience that defined this aspect of knighthood. At the heart of any siege was planning and strategy. Commanders observed fortifications, mapped terrain, and assessed the strength and weaknesses of walls, towers. Siege towers provided mobility and protection. Imagine a tall, wheeled structure, often as high as the castle walls themselves, allowing soldiers to approach under cover and gain a vantage point for attacking defenders. Ladders or bridges extended from the top, enabling troops to storm battlements with relative safety. These towers were carefully engineered to balance height, weight, and mobility, requiring skilled carpenters, knowledge of physics, and precise coordination to be effective. The trebuchet, a marvel of medieval engineering, converted the potential energy of counterweights into devastating projectile force. Picture a massive arm swinging through the air, launching stones or flaming projectiles over walls, smashing into gates or fortifications. The trebuchet was slow to reload, but each strike was calculated, accurate, and terrifying in its destructive capacity. Teams of engineers, gunners, and soldiers worked together to adjust angles, weight, and timing, creating a symphony of precision and power aimed at overcoming even the strongest defenses. Catapults, smaller and faster than trebuchets, provided flexibility in attacks. These devices hurled stones, incendiaries, or diseased carcasses, introducing both physical and psychological warfare. Imagine the arc of a flaming projectile soaring over walls, defenders scrambling to extinguish fires, the chaos adding tension to the already charged atmosphere of the siege. Siegecraft blended engineering, psychology, and timing, demanding creativity, discipline, and patience from all involved. Scaling walls with ladders required stealth, coordination, and bravery. Picture soldiers approaching under cover of darkness, carrying long wooden ladders, preparing to mount the stone defenses, while arrows rain down from above. This tactic demanded precise timing and courage, as a single misstep could be fatal. Ladders were often used in conjunction with other devices, such as siege towers or battering rams, as part of a coordinated effort to overwhelm defenders. Mining and sapping involved tunneling beneath walls to collapse foundations. Imagine the quiet, tense work of digging tunnels, shoring them up, and placing supports that could be burned or removed at the crucial moment. The earth trembles slightly as the tunnel is set, the defenders unaware of the impending collapse. This tactic required patience, skill, and stealth, illustrating the ingenuity and relentless persistence of medieval siege warfare. Defenders employed countermeasures with equal creativity. Boiling oil, stones, arrows, and crossbow fire poured from battlements to disrupt attacks. Picture a defender carefully dropping stones on soldiers attempting to scale walls, or hurling molten pitch from a tower, each action a calculated defense within the rhythm of battle. Siege warfare was a conversation between attackers and defenders. Each movement, each strike, a negotiation of skill, strategy, and anticipation. Siege engines also evolved to adapt to the materials and tactics of the time. For example, mantlets, mobile, protective screens, allowed soldiers to approach walls with some degree of safety, while chevaux de frise, wooden spikes, protected vulnerable flanks and slowed infantry advances. Imagine the careful placement of these devices, the timing of their deployment, and the coordination required to integrate them with the larger siege strategies. Every element of siegecraft was both functional and deliberate, reflecting centuries of accumulated experience. Communication and coordination were critical during sieges. Knights, engineers, infantry, and archers had to work as a cohesive unit, often relying on signals, flags, horns, or runners to synchronize movements. Picture the tense silence of observation, followed by a sharp signal, and the immediate, coordinated motion of teams operating rams, ladders, or trebuchets. The choreography of siegecraft was precise, requiring both discipline and adaptability as the defenders responded dynamically to every maneuver. Sieges could last weeks, months, or even years, depending on the strength of the fortifications and the resources available. During this time, logistics were vital. Food, water, weapons, and morale all needed careful management. Imagine knights and soldiers establishing encampments, rationing supplies, tending to wounded, and rotating duties, creating a rhythm that sustained effort over long durations. The patient persistence of siege warfare demanded endurance, resilience, and strategic planning, qualities that mirrored the broader discipline of knighthood. Siege warfare also carried symbolic weight. Capturing a castle or fortress represented not only tactical victory, but the assertion of authority, control, and legitimacy. Imagine a knight raising a flag over a conquered gate, the weight of triumph tempered by respect for the skill and courage of those who defended it. The interplay of power, strategy, and ethical conduct was embedded in the very act of siegecraft, highlighting the complex human dimensions of medieval warfare. As you let these images settle in your mind, imagine the rhythm of siege life, the measured swing of a battering ram, the slow arc of a trebuchet, the quiet tension of tunneling beneath walls, the strategic placement of soldiers, and the steady coordination required to bring immense engineering and human effort to bear on a single objective. The precision, patience, and discipline of siege warfare carry a hypnotic cadence, inviting calm reflection and immersion in the timeless choreography of medieval combat. Medieval armor, plate, chainmail, and helmets. Close your eyes and imagine the gentle glint of sunlight reflecting off polished steel in a castle armory, the soft hiss of oil being applied to chainmail, and the rhythmic clink of metal as a knight dons his armor. Armor was not merely protection, it was a symbol of status, artistry, and mastery. Crafted with skill and precision, to safeguard life while allowing freedom of movement. Tonight, we explore the intricate design, history, and function of medieval armor, from chainmail to plate and the iconic helmets that crowned the knightly figure, immersing ourselves in the quiet elegance of craftsmanship and preparation. At the foundation of a knight's protection was chainmail, sometimes called mail. Imagine a squire carefully examining thousands of interlocking iron rings, each one forged, riveted, and assembled with painstaking care. Mail was flexible, capable of absorbing and distributing the impact of slashing weapons, arrows, and blunt force, while allowing the knight to move with agility. Picture the tactile sensation as the chain slides over leather padding, the soft clatter of metal against metal, and the quiet reassurance of protection worn close to the body. Beneath the chainmail, knights wore gambesons, thickly padded jackets that cushioned blows and prevented chafing. Imagine the squire meticulously lacing the layers, ensuring that each stitch aligns perfectly, creating both comfort and defense. The combination of chainmail and gambeson reflects a balance between mobility, protection, and endurance, illustrating the thoughtful layering that defined medieval martial technology. Over time, plate armor emerged, transforming both the appearance and function of protective gear. Plate offered superior defense against piercing and crushing attacks, while still allowing remarkable flexibility. Picture a suit of polished steel plates, each shaped and articulated to follow the contours of the body, pauldrons protecting the shoulders, cuirasses shielding the torso, greaves guarding the legs, and gauntlets securing the hands. Every curve, rivet, and joint was designed with precision, ensuring mobility while creating a nearly impenetrable barrier. The helmets of medieval knights were both functional and symbolic, from the open-faced bassinet to the fully enclosing great helm. These headpieces protected the most vulnerable part of the body while also conveying identity, rank, and style. Imagine the squire assisting a knight into a helmet, adjusting straps, testing vision slits, and ensuring comfort beneath the polished surface. The helmet was a shield for both body and mind, instilling confidence while safeguarding life, and often adorned with crests, colors, and intricate engravings that reflected lineage, allegiance, or achievement. Armor was custom made for each knight, reflecting individual body shape, stature, and preference. Imagine the careful measurements, adjustments, and fittings required to ensure perfect alignment, balance, and comfort. Weight distribution was critical. Too heavy, and the knight's mobility would be compromised. Too light, and protection would be insufficient. Skilled armorers blended engineering, artistry, and practical experience to create pieces that were as elegant as they were functional. Artisans crafted articulated joints in plate armor to allow freedom of movement in combat. Imagine a knight practicing swings, thrusts, and parries, each joint moving seamlessly, the metal sliding with quiet precision. Armors were tested and adjusted repeatedly to ensure that bending, twisting, and lunging were maintenance was a continuous and meticulous task, Steel was prone to rust, leather straps could crack, and rivets might loosen over time. Picture a squire applying oil, polishing plates, and tightening fastenings with careful precision. This ritual of care not only ensured readiness, but also instilled patience, respect, and an intimate understanding of the armor itself. The relationship between knight and armor was almost symbiotic. The metal protected the body, while the wearer maintained its integrity and function. Armor design evolved with changing weapons and tactics. For instance, the rise of crossbows and longbows influenced the thickness and coverage of plate, while heavier cavalry charges prompted improvements in joint articulation. Imagine armorers observing battlefield outcomes, adjusting designs, and experimenting with new shapes and reinforcements. Each innovation reflects a dialogue between technology, strategy, and human ingenuity, demonstrating the adaptability and creativity of medieval craftsmanship. Beyond practicality, armor carried symbolic meaning. It represented status, courage, and identity, signaling to allies and enemies alike the presence of a trained, prepared, and noble warrior. Imagine a knight stepping onto the field, every plate gleaming, the heraldic crest displayed prominently, exuding authority and confidence. The armor was both protection and proclamation, a statement of readiness, discipline, and honor. Knights also trained extensively while wearing armor to ensure endurance and proficiency. Imagine the rhythmic cadence of foot drills, sword swings, and jousting maneuvers under the weight of steel, the steady breathing, the gradual conditioning of muscles to accommodate heavy protection. This training instilled both strength and resilience, blending physical conditioning with skill mastery, preparing the knight for the dual demands of agility and defense in combat. Helmets often included visors to protect the face while allowing vision and ventilation. Some were removable for ease of communication or observation. Imagine lifting a visor, the faint echo of movement, the adjustment of straps, and the balance between visibility, protection, and comfort. These subtle design elements illustrate the sophisticated interplay of human needs, mechanical ingenuity, and the demands of warfare. Armor was a living work of craftsmanship, constantly evolving in response to technological innovations, strategic needs, and aesthetic desires. Each suit tells a story of battles survived, tournaments contested, artisans' skill, and the ideals of knighthood. Imagine a knight gazing at his reflection, hands resting on the hilt of a sword, armor gleaming, knowing that every plate, ring, and strap embodies centuries of knowledge, discipline, and artistry. As you let these images settle in your mind, picture the quiet rhythm of an armory, soft clinks of metal, the gentle hiss of oil, the measured motions of a squire assisting his knight, and the serene gleam of polished steel. Armor is not merely protection, it is an extension of intention, skill, and honor, embodying both practical function and artistic beauty. Allow this vision to flow through your thoughts, wrapping you in the calm, meticulous elegance of medieval craftsmanship. Weapons of the knight, swords, maces, and axes. Close your eyes and imagine the quiet glow of morning light reflecting off. Steel, the soft hiss of oil being applied to a finely forged blade, and the gentle weight of a weapon resting in the hand, cool and ready. A knight's weapons were not mere tools of destruction. They were extensions of skill, courage, and discipline, each forged with care and balanced to match the wielder's strength, style, and purpose. Tonight, we explore the variety, craftsmanship, and tactical use of the weapons that defined a knight's identity, imagining the rhythm, preparation, and artistry inherent in every strike. At the center of a knight's arsenal was the sword, often called the soul of the knight. Picture a long sword, balanced for both thrust and cut, its hilt wrapped in leather, crossguard gleaming, and blade sharp enough to reflect the light like a mirror. Swords came in many forms. The straight double-edged longsword, ideal for slashing and thrusting. The arming sword, lighter and faster. And later, the specialized estoc, designed to pierce armor. Each was chosen for purpose, technique, and the personal preference of the knight. Forging a sword was an art form in itself. Imagine a blacksmith hammering glowing steel on an anvil, sparks dancing in the dim light, shaping the metal to exact specifications. The blade was tempered, polished, and sharpened, its balance tested meticulously to ensure fluid motion and precise control. Even minor imperfections could affect performance. So, every sword was a testament to craftsmanship, patience, and intimate knowledge of material properties. Knights trained extensively with their swords, developing muscle memory, timing, and tactical awareness. Picture the rhythmic swing of a blade in the courtyard, the sound of metal meeting, practice targets, and the steady footwork that anchors every strike. Combat drills involved parries, thrusts, and combinations of cuts, reinforcing reflexes and coordination. Mastery required hours of repetition, focus, and mindfulness, blending strength, speed, and strategy into seamless motion. The mace was another essential weapon, designed to overcome the protection of plate armor. Picture a heavy metal head mounted on a sturdy shaft, swung with deliberate force to crush through defenses. Maces required precision, timing, and strength, as their impact could incapacitate an opponent even without cutting. Imagine the satisfying arc of a well-practiced swing, the controlled follow-through, and the awareness of balance and leverage, creating a deadly rhythm that combined technique and raw power. The battle axe offered versatility and lethality. Knights used axes of various sizes, from one-handed forms suitable for mounted combat to larger, two-handed versions for foot engagement. Imagine the blade slicing through the air, spinning slightly with momentum, designed to pierce, cleave, or hook an opponent's shield. Axes demanded both agility and strength, their effectiveness enhanced by skillful manipulation and understanding of weight, leverage, and impact. Knights also relied on polearms, such as lances and halberds, particularly in mounted combat. Picture a lance, polished and straight, extending from a destrier's grip, its point aimed precisely for charging strikes. The rhythm of mounted combat required synchronization between horse and rider, timing the release force to maximize impact. Pole arms extended reach, maintained distance, and transformed cavalry into a formidable, coordinated force on the battlefield. Archery, though less common for heavily armored knights, complemented close combat weapons. Crossbows provided precision, power, and consistency, capable of piercing armor at distance. Imagine the slow, deliberate process of spanning a crossbow, aiming carefully, and releasing with a satisfying snap. Arrows and bolts were chosen for weight, tip design, and distance, reflecting the careful attention to detail and strategic consideration inherent in medieval warfare. Weapon maintenance was as critical as use. Blades were sharpened regularly, metal polished, and wooden shafts inspected for integrity. Picture a squire meticulously cleaning a sword, oiling joints of a mace, and testing an axe head for secure attachment. This daily care reinforced responsibility, familiarity, and respect for the tools that could mean the difference between life and death in combat. Weapons were often personalized, carrying symbolic and practical markings. Blades might bear inscriptions, family crests, or decorative engravings, linking functionality with identity. Picture a knight examining his sword, noting the etched symbols that signify lineage, loyalty, or past victories. These details imbued each weapon with both practicality and meaning, connecting skill, heritage, and honor in a tangible form. Training with weapons involved rhythm, focus, and patience. Imagine the repetitive practice of strikes, parries, and footwork, each motion reinforcing timing, precision, and instinct. Even in moments of rest, a knight might visualize combinations, anticipate counters, or trace the arc of a swing in the mind, cultivating readiness and mental clarity. This integration of physical skill, tactical awareness, and mindfulness defined mastery and preparedness. Weapons also played a ceremonial and symbolic role. During tournaments, swords, maces, and lances were displayed in gleaming perfection, demonstrating status, wealth, and prowess. Imagine a knight entering the lists, weapon in hand, the polished steel reflecting sunlight, signaling both readiness and prestige. The aesthetic presentation of weapons reinforced social hierarchy, skill, and the ideals of chivalry. As you let these images drift through your mind, picture the calm rhythm of an armory, the gentle clink of steel, the tactile weight of a sword in hand, the deliberate arcs of practice swings, and the quiet attention to every detail of maintenance. Weapons are not only instruments of combat, they are extensions of skill, focus, and discipline, embodying both artistry and practicality. Allow this vision to flow through your thoughts, carrying a sense of calm, precision, and timeless craftsmanship. Tournaments and jousting, close your eyes and imagine the gentle murmur of a medieval town awakening to the excitement of a tournament, banners fluttering in the breeze, and the distant clatter of hooves on cobblestones. Tournaments and jousts were more than spectacles. They were a stage where knights demonstrated skill, courage, and honor, while blending martial practice with pageantry and ritual. Tonight, we explore the rhythm, drama, and significance of these events, immersing ourselves in the artistry, strategy, and culture of medieval tournaments. Tournaments, were carefully organized competitions designed to showcase martial prowess while reinforcing the social hierarchy and ideals of chivalry. Picture a tournament ground enclosed by wooden barriers, grandstands filled with spectators, and knights in gleaming armor awaiting their turn. These events offered an opportunity for knights to train under controlled conditions, testing speed, accuracy, and strength, while also displaying valor, poise, and composure before the public. At the heart of many tournaments was the joust, a mounted contest of skill and precision. Imagine two knights charging toward each other across a narrow strip of turf, lances leveled, horses thundering in unison. The goal was to strike the opponent while maintaining balance and composure, unseating him without causing unnecessary harm. The joust demanded mastery of horsemanship, timing, and tactical awareness, with every movement calibrated to achieve maximum effect while preserving safety. Preparation for a tournament was a careful ritual. Knights inspected and polished their armor, tested their weapons, and practiced their techniques with squires and fellow competitors. Picture a squire adjusting the lance, tightening straps on gauntlets, and ensuring the saddle is secure. The rhythm of these preparations, meticulous and deliberate, cultivated confidence, focus, and readiness, creating a calm yet charged atmosphere as the event approached. Jousting tournaments were governed by strict rules and etiquette, emphasizing fairness and honor. Knights were expected to compete with integrity, following protocols for turns, scoring, and conduct. Imagine the quiet tension before a pass, the deliberate pause, the alignment of horse and lance, and the instantaneous release of energy in a charge. Each strike was measured, each maneuver calculated, reflecting discipline, respect, and mastery of the craft. Beyond the joust, tournaments often included melees, group battles designed to simulate real combat scenarios. Imagine teams of knights charging and clashing in controlled chaos, coordinating strategies, testing endurance, and demonstrating agility and strength. The melee blended spectacle with practical training, allowing knights to hone teamwork, situational awareness, and adaptability in a dynamic environment. Spectators were an essential part of the tournament experience. Nobles, clergy, and townspeople gathered to witness the skill, strategy, and pageantry. Picture colorful banners, heralds announcing competitors, and the crowd responding to impressive displays of prowess. These events reinforced social structures, cultural ideals, and communal identity, weaving martial skill into the broader tapestry of medieval life. Tournaments also served political and social functions. Knights could display loyalty, gain favor with lords, and demonstrate their prowess to potential allies or patrons. Imagine a knight receiving commendation from a noble, forging alliances through demonstration of skill, and navigating the subtle interplay of reputation, influence, and opportunity. The ceremonial dimension of tournaments intertwined with practical and political considerations, reflecting the multifaceted nature of knighthood. The equipment used in tournaments was often specialized. Lances were designed to break upon impact, reducing injury risk, while armor might be reinforced in areas particularly exposed during jousts. Imagine a knight carefully selecting a lance, adjusting its length and weight, and rehearsing the feel of its balance in hand. Attention to detail ensured safety, effectiveness, and the harmonious execution of each pass, highlighting the thoughtful preparation behind every spectacle. Tournaments also reinforced the ideals of chivalry. Knights competed with courage, honor, and respect, mindful of the audience, opponents, and the rules of engagement. Imagine the silent exchange of acknowledgement before a pass, the respectful bow after a strike, and the composure maintained even under pressure. These rituals embody the ethical and social principles of knighthood, transforming martial competition into a demonstration of character as well as skill. Feasts, celebrations, and ceremonial presentations often accompanied tournaments. Victorious knights were awarded prizes, accolades, or symbolic items such as garters, gloves, or banners. Imagine a hall filled with music, the aroma of roasted meats, and the quiet pride of a knight receiving recognition for both bravery and skill. These rituals celebrated achievement, reinforced hierarchy, and provided moments of communal joy and reflection. Training for tournaments extended beyond physical skill. Knights practiced strategy, anticipation, and psychological composure, learning to read opponents' movements, judge timing, and control their own focus and energy. Picture a knight visualizing a series of passes, rehearsing the sequence in mind, and integrating both mental and physical preparation into each movement. This interplay of body, mind, and emotion created a rhythm that was both calming and exhilarating, ideal for immersive reflection. Tournaments evolved over centuries, incorporating regional variations, innovations in equipment, and stylistic changes in presentation. Imagine traveling from one castle to another, observing differences in rules, armor design, or ceremonial practice, each reflecting local culture, priorities, and values. Despite variation, the essence remained an elegant synthesis of skill, honor, spectacle, and ritual. As you let these images settle in your mind, picture the gentle cadence of tournament life, the rhythmic thrum of hooves, the measured pause before a charge, the controlled impact of lance on shield, and the applause of spectators blending into a harmonious background. Tournaments were not only tests of skill, they were orchestrated expressions of discipline, courage, and tradition, a celebration of both human ability and the ideals that shaped the world of knights. The life of medieval kings and nobility close your eyes and imagine the soft morning light spilling over a grand castle, the distant echo of trumpets announcing the day, and the quiet rhythm of servants preparing for the routines of court. Medieval kings and nobles were at the apex of power, their lives a complex weave of governance, ceremony, martial responsibility, and domestic routine. Tonight, we explore the daily life, duties, and privileges of these figures, imagining the delicate balance of authority, strategy, and ritual that defined their world. A king's day often began with private devotion and reflection, a moment to align moral purpose with duty. Picture a monarch kneeling in a chapel, hands clasped, candlelight flickering across richly decorated walls, reciting prayers for guidance, justice, and wisdom. Faith and governance were intertwined, shaping decisions, reinforcing legitimacy, and cultivating the inner discipline necessary for leadership. Nobles often followed similar patterns, blending personal devotion with social and political obligations. Administrative duties dominated much of a king's life. Imagine the council chamber. Advisors, scribes, and envoys gathered, discussing matters of taxation, law, diplomacy, and military strategy. Kings listened, questioned, and issued judgments, carefully balancing the needs of the realm with personal, familial, and political considerations. Nobles, similarly, oversaw estates, collected rents, enforced local laws, and managed the labor of peasants, ensuring both productivity and loyalty. This steady rhythm of administration required patience, intellect, and an acute awareness of the interconnectedness of social structures. Ceremony and spectacle reinforced authority. Picture a great hall adorned with tapestries, banners, and heraldic symbols, nobles bowing as the king enters, the rhythmic cadence of footfalls echoing across stone floors, court rituals, including audiences, banquets, and tournaments, projected power and reinforced social hierarchies. Nobles displayed loyalty, knights demonstrated skill, and merchants and artisans observed decorum, all within a carefully orchestrated framework that combined symbolism, aesthetics, and authority. The king and nobility were also deeply involved in military planning and oversight. Imagine a council table strewn with maps, models of castles, and reports from scouts. Kings issued commands, assigned generals, and coordinated logistics, balancing strategy with the practical realities of supply, terrain, and morale. Nobles supported these efforts by raising troops, training knights, and preparing fortifications. Even in moments of ceremony, the presence of martial readiness was palpable, a reminder that authority rested on both governance and the capacity to defend and expand power. Education and intellectual cultivation were central to noble life. Kings and high-ranking nobles studied history, law, philosophy, and theology, often guided by scholars and clerics. Imagine a library filled with manuscripts, the scent of parchment and ink, a monarch or noble reading late into the evening, absorbing lessons of governance, diplomacy, and ethics. Knowledge was a source of power, enabling leaders to make informed decisions, anticipate challenges, and craft strategies that balanced intellect with action. Leisure and recreation were carefully integrated into daily life. Hunting, hawking, and falconry allowed nobles to exercise skill, patience, and coordination while enjoying the natural world. Picture a noble riding through forest paths, bow or falcon in hand, observing the landscape, attuned to the rhythm of horse and prey. Music, poetry, and storytelling enriched the court, cultivating aesthetic sensibilities and reinforcing cultural identity. Even leisure was structured, disciplined, and reflective of social expectations. Diplomacy and negotiation were constant responsibilities. Kings and nobles interacted with foreign envoys, neighboring lords, and internal factions, navigating alliances, treaties, and rivalries. Imagine the careful exchange of words, the subtle gestures of respect, the strategic pause before agreements, and the integration of ceremonial display with political acumen. These interactions required both tact and authority, blending intellect, psychology, and ethical consideration in pursuit of stability and influence. The king's household was a complex web of officials, guards, servants, and advisors. Picture the constant, quiet rhythm of activity: stewards managing resources, cooks preparing meals, armorers tending weapons, and attendants ensuring the smooth functioning of daily life. This orchestration required coordination, discipline, and attentiveness, reflecting the careful balance between private life, public responsibility, and ceremonial expectation. Noble life was also intertwined with religious obligations: attendance at Mass, observance of feast days, and patronage of monasteries or cathedrals reinforced moral authority and social legitimacy. Imagine a noble riding to a distant abbey, observing rituals, donating resources, and participating in spiritual reflection. Faith and governance were inseparable, shaping personal conduct, public perception, and the ethical framework within which power was exercised. Travel and inspection of estates were part of noble responsibilities. Imagine a lord riding from castle to village, observing agricultural practices, resolving disputes, and ensuring that laws were upheld. These journeys connected distant lands, strengthened authority, and reinforced the social contract between rulers and those they governed. Knights often accompanied nobles, providing protection and demonstrating martial skill while participating in the broader rhythm of governance. Ceremony marked transitions, achievements, and recognition. Coronations, knighting ceremonies, and tournaments punctuated the calendar, blending martial, social, and spiritual significance. Imagine the solemnity of a coronation, the rhythmic chants, the carefully choreographed rituals, and the quiet reflection of the newly crowned monarch on responsibilities and legacy. These events reinforce hierarchy, continuity, and the ideals that governed both courtly and martial life. Knights and religion, close your eyes and imagine the serene flicker of candlelight in a quiet chapel, the faint scent of incense curling through stone arches, and the soft murmur of monks chanting prayers. For medieval knights, religion was not only a guide for personal morality, but also an integral part of martial life, influencing duty, loyalty, and honor. Tonight, we explore the spiritual dimension of knighthood, the rituals, moral codes, and pilgrimages that intertwined faith with martial service, immersing ourselves in the contemplative and disciplined rhythm that shaped the soul of the knight. The journey of a knight often began with rituals of blessing and consecration. Imagine a young squire kneeling before an altar, hands folded, listening as a priest recites prayers for courage, protection, and virtue. The ceremonial blessing of armor, weapons, and even the knight himself symbolized divine guidance and moral responsibility. Faith provided a framework for conduct, reinforcing courage, self-discipline, and the ethical application of martial power. Knights were guided by the code of chivalry, which merged martial duty with religious and ethical obligations. Courage, loyalty, honor, and protection of the weak were central tenets, all underscored by spiritual commitment. Imagine a knight reflecting quietly before battle, considering not only tactics and strategy, but also the moral implications of his actions. This inner dialogue shaped decisions, influenced behavior, and reinforced the integration of faith with martial skill. Participation in religious services was a daily or regular activity for knights. Mass, prayer, and observance of holy days created a structured rhythm, blending devotion with preparation. Picture a knight rising early, donning polished armor, and attending chapel before breakfast, the solemn chants and flickering candlelight aligning the mind and spirit with purpose. Spiritual practice was both grounding and inspiring, providing resilience and focus amidst the demands of training, service, and warfare. The Church also influenced warfare through crusades and holy campaigns, where knights were called to fight in the name of faith. Imagine a knight hearing the call to pilgrimage and military service, reflecting on the sacred responsibility and preparing for a journey that combined physical challenge with spiritual purpose. Religious observance intertwined with military strategy, framing battles as moral as well as tactical endeavors, and imbuing action with higher meaning. Pilgrimages were another expression of faith for knights, often undertaken to sacred sites, relics, or distant shrines. Imagine the rhythmic march of horses over cobblestones and dirt roads, the quiet moments of reflection at monasteries along the route, and the serene satisfaction upon reaching the holy destination. These journeys cultivated patience, humility, and a deepened sense of moral and spiritual purpose, reinforcing the inner discipline that mirrored martial training. Knights also protected the church and its followers, embodying the ideal of the holy warrior. Imagine a knight standing guard over a monastery, observing the rhythm of daily prayers, and silently committing to the defense of both sacred spaces and vulnerable communities. Service was not only to a lord or king, but also to higher spiritual principles, blending duty, courage, and devotion in a seamless practice of faith, informed martial responsibility. Religious symbolism was integrated into the knight's gear and identity, crosses etched into shields, engravings on armor, and ceremonial swords marked with holy symbols reinforced moral and spiritual alignment. Picture a knight lifting his visor, the cross on his chest glinting softly, subtle but constant reminder of divine guidance and accountability. Every gesture, every detail of equipment carried spiritual resonance, connecting action with principle and practice with belief. Knights participated in ritualized ceremonies of penance and blessing before and after campaigns. Imagine a solemn gathering, a priest laying hands on the knight, reciting prayers for forgiveness, courage, and protection, while the knight reflects on past deeds and prepares for the future. These rituals fostered moral mindfulness, reinforcing the importance of ethics, accountability, and spiritual integrity alongside martial skill. Education in religious and ethical principles was also central to the life of a knight. Scripture, moral treatises, and stories of saints and heroes were studied to inspire courage, compassion, and wisdom. Picture a knight reading by candlelight, absorbing lessons on virtue, justice, and humility, internalizing the spiritual framework that guided both battlefield conduct and personal growth. Knowledge and reflection created a rhythm of self-improvement, aligning body, mind, and soul with the ideals of knighthood. Charitable acts were another manifestation of faith. Knights supported monasteries, aided the poor, and protected pilgrims. Imagine the quiet satisfaction of distributing alms, assisting travelers, and observing rituals that reinforced moral responsibility. These acts linked spiritual devotion with tangible service, demonstrating that true knighthood encompassed both martial skill and ethical, compassionate action. Knights also observed fasting and ritual abstinence, aligning their bodies with spiritual discipline. Imagine the quiet restraint of meals, the reflection during periods of fasting, and the awareness of moral and physical balance. These practices mirrored the endurance and patience cultivated through training and service, creating harmony between inner discipline and outward action. Faith offered comfort and guidance in times of conflict. On the eve of battle, knights often prayed for protection, clarity, and courage, feeling the steadying presence of spiritual purpose amid uncertainty. Imagine a knight kneeling in the quiet of a tent, candle flickering, heart steadying, mind focused on both tactical plans and moral resolve. This spiritual grounding enhanced composure, resilience, and the capacity to act with both bravery and ethical consideration. The legacy of knights and medieval warfare. Knights and their campaigns influenced political structures and governance. Imagine the strategic placement of castles, the organization of armies, and the feudal bonds that structured society. Kings relied on knights for protection, enforcement of law, and expansion of territory, shaping centralized authority. Nobles, in turn, reinforced local governance, collected taxes, and administered justice. The careful orchestration of martial, political, and social systems created a rhythm of order, hierarchy, and stability that echoes in modern ideas of governance and leadership. The chivalric code has endured as a cultural ideal. Courage, honor, loyalty, and protection of the weak were not only practical rules, but moral principles that inspired literature, poetry, and art. Imagine a knight kneeling in contemplation, reflecting on the ideals of service, virtue, and integrity. These principles have transcended time, influencing concepts of duty, ethical conduct, and personal honor that continue to shape societal values and stories even today. Architectural legacies remain visible in castles, fortifications, and city layouts. Imagine walking along the thick stone walls of a medieval keep, tracing the curves of battlements, and observing towers designed with precision for both defense and aesthetics. Modern architecture, historical preservation, and even fantasy worlds draw inspiration from these feats of engineering, reflecting the ingenuity, vision, and artistry of medieval builders. Every arch, moat, and gate is a silent testament to centuries of ingenuity, discipline, and careful planning. Medieval warfare also contributed to technological innovation. Siege engines, armor design, and weapons development pushed the boundaries of metallurgy, engineering, and physics. Imagine the slow arc of a trebuchet, the polished curve of a longsword, or the interlocking links of chainmail, each representing experimentation, skill, and adaptation. These innovations laid foundations for later advances in military engineering, craftsmanship, and materials science, connecting the past to modern technical achievements. Cultural and literary legacies are profound. Tales of Arthurian knights, epic battles, and heroic quests were inspired by historical realities, blending fact and imagination. Imagine the storytelling in great halls, fires crackling as minstrels recount deeds of valor, cunning, and honor. These stories continue to captivate the human imagination, shaping novels, films, and games, while preserving the ideals, drama, and spectacle of the medieval world in a timeless, dreamlike narrative. The ideals of knighthood also influenced ritual and ceremony. From knighting ceremonies to tournaments, these structured events reinforced values, discipline, and social cohesion. Imagine the solemnity of a knight being dubbed, the rhythmic echo of swords striking shields in tournaments, and the carefully choreographed movements of pageantry. These rituals instilled a sense of continuity, order, and reverence, connecting generations through shared symbols, gestures, and principles. Knights also shaped military strategy and leadership. Imagine the planning of campaigns, the careful coordination of cavalry and infantry, and the construction of fortifications that dictated the flow of battles. Their disciplined approach, attention to logistics, and adaptability influenced later military theory and the organization of armies. Strategy, foresight, and resilience became hallmarks of effective leadership, lessons that continue to resonate in military and organizational contexts today. Art and craftsmanship flourished under the influence of knighthood. Armor, weapons, and heraldic symbols were not only practical but aesthetic achievements. Imagine the soft gleam of polished plate, the intricate etching of swords, and the vibrant colors of banners fluttering over battlements. These creations bridged utility and beauty, influencing later decorative arts, sculpture, and design, leaving a lasting impression of elegance and skill. Religious influence persisted, as knights often blended spiritual devotion with martial duty. Imagine the quiet contemplation of a knight in chapel, the rhythmic prayers, and the alignment of ethical principles with action. These practices fostered moral reflection, discipline, and a framework for purposeful living, leaving an enduring impression on ideas of virtue, courage, and ethical responsibility. Tournaments and jousts left their mark on sport and public spectacle. Imagine the clatter of hooves, the precision of a lance, and the applause of spectators in a grand medieval arena. Modern jousting reenactments, equestrian events, and competitive sports draw inspiration from these controlled displays of skill, blending physical challenge with ritual, ceremony, and audience engagement. The principles of fair play, skill demonstration, and structured competition carry forward from medieval tournaments into contemporary traditions. Education, literature, and storytelling preserved the memory of knights and their deeds. Chronicles, illuminated manuscripts, and oral tales captured strategies, heroism, and ethical reflection. Imagine a monk meticulously copying a manuscript, the flicker of candlelight casting shadows on the inked illustrations of armor and battle. These records preserved both the practical and symbolic aspects of knighthood, transmitting knowledge, ideals, and inspiration to future generations. Modern culture continues to draw on these legacies. Fantasy novels, films, video games, and art frequently evoke knights, castles, and battles, blending historical elements with imagination. Picture a grand castle in a storybook landscape, banners fluttering, knights in gleaming armor standing watch. The enduring fascination reflects both admiration for skill, courage, and order, and a deep-seated connection to human narratives of challenge, growth, and honor. Finally, the human qualities of knighthood endure in collective memory. Discipline, courage, loyalty, ethical reflection, and respect for skill. Imagine the silent echo of a knight's footsteps in an empty courtyard, the gleam of armor catching fading light, and the quiet dedication to purpose and duty. These qualities resonate beyond medieval history, inspiring ideals of personal integrity, commitment, and mastery in countless modern contexts. As you let these reflections settle, picture the serene cadence of history, castles standing as silent witnesses, swords gleaming in quiet armories, banners fluttering gently, and the soft echo of footsteps in great halls. The legacy of knights and medieval warfare is not only in battles fought or territories claimed, it lives in culture, art, ethics, and imagination, carrying timeless lessons of courage, discipline, and the harmonization of skill, purpose, and honor. And now, with a smile on your face, you will have a good understanding of the entire medieval history of knights, kings, and their world. Rest peacefully, allowing the stories, images, and rhythms of this bygone era to drift through your mind, guiding you to a gentle, restful sleep. Goodbye, dear friend. See you next time.